Thank you.
Good evening, all. Mr. Chair, you can call the meeting to order. The time is now 6:30 p.m.
Good evening, all. My name is Jim Lawrence. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the 2021 Supervisory District Advisory Commission. On behalf of the 15-member commission, I'd like to thank all of you for your interest in this important process. It's not an overstatement to say that we, this commission, and all of you are helping to ensure that the fundamentals of democracy are alive and well here in San Mateo County. As you may know, San Mateo County is divided into 5 districts. Voters in each district elect a member to the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. Our work today will help determine which neighborhoods and communities are grouped together in those 5 districts. Why is this important? 1, how and where districts are drawn can shape communities' ability to elect representatives of their choice. 2, districts substantially equal in population help to ensure residents have equal access to representation. And 3, revisions to district boundaries have lasting impact. They will remain in effect for the next 10 years. It is important to remember that the Board of Supervisors are full-time elected officials who oversee a $3 billion plus annual budget. This budget funds programs that include social services, public health protection, housing programs, roads and infrastructure, county parks, elections, and most importantly, public safety. Board members also serve on numerous regional councils that set policy for transportation, environmental protection, and other important issues. It is a very important role in our county. So we look forward to hearing from all of you tonight about what you consider your community, where you might draw the lines to help us define districts for the next decade. Again, thank you for being here tonight. I'll turn it back to the clerk.
Thank you, Chair Lawrence. Before I take the roll call, just have a few instructions. This meeting will be interpreted into Spanish, Mandarin, and Tagalog. To access the audio channel for these 3 languages, please click the globe icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen on your taskbar. There will be a menu that will appear, and then you will be able to select your language of choice. Victor, can you please translate, followed by your other staff members?
Thank you, Suki. Muy buenas noches. Les queremos dejar saber a todos ustedes que esta reunión será interpretada en el español, mandarín y tagalo. Para poder acceder al canal de audio de estos 3 idiomas, usted tendrá que hacer clic en un icono del globo o un mundo situado al fondo de su pantalla en la barrera de tareas de esta plataforma de Zoom. Después de eso aparecerá un menú y usted entonces podrá seleccionar el idioma que usted desee. Gracias. Thank you. Now for Mandarin, Wei.
这个网上会议呢，将提供西班牙语、国语普通话和那个菲律宾话的口译服务。要使用这3种语言的翻译频道，请点击你荧幕底部的任务栏上的地球图标按钮，然后呢就会出现选单，请从选单里面选择那个中文这样子就可以听到我们国语普通话的同声翻译。谢谢大家 ，Thank you.
Thank you, Wei. Now, Sue, would you kindly do it in Tagalog?
Magandang gabi sa inyong lahat. Ang pagtitipon na ito ay sasalin sa Espanyol, sa Czech at sa Tagalog para ma-access ang channel ng radyo nitong 3 lingwaheng sinabi. I-click lamang yung mundo na icon. Merong lalabas na menu at maaari na ninyong piliin ang inyong gustong lingwahe. Salamat po.
Let me start the channels now. Give me 1 second. Okay, the channels have started. So let me now take the roll call. Commissioner Azos is absent. Commissioner Bandrapalli?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Barber?
I'm here.
Perfect, thank you. Commissioner Bledsoe?
Here.
Commissioner Chan?
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Chow? Commissioner Chow, you might be on mute. Commissioner Chow, I see that you're present. Can you unmute your mic? Okay, I'll come back to Commissioner Chow. For now, she's absent. Commissioner Davis?
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Dinan?
Present.
Commissioner Espinoza?
Present.
Thank you. Yeah, 1 second. Commissioner Guerrero is absent. Commissioner Monzon Ruiz?
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Albert?
Here.
Commissioner Romero?
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Salander?
I'm here.
Thank you. Chair Lawrence?
Here.
Thank you. And I do see that Commissioner Azos has joined. Commissioner Azos?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Chow, are you there?
She
Okay.
was having some technical difficulties. She texted.
Okay, so for now, I'm gonna mark her absent, but if she can chime in and then just let us know when she's there. Thank you. Go ahead, Chair Lawrence, please proceed.
Okay, item 3 on the agenda. I'll ask for a motion to set the agenda for tonight.
I move.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. Can we do the item number 2 first?
Sure, sorry. Skipped over it. Item 2, oral comments from the public. This is a time for the public to address the commission on any item that is not on the agenda tonight.
Thank you. Members of the public, those who are attending via Zoom conference, we will use the raise hand feature in order to organize any public comments. When you hear your name called, I will send you a request to unmute your mic, and once you accept the request, you can begin speaking. These instructions are being provided live in Spanish, Mandarin, and Tagalog. If you wish to hear this meeting in any of those 3 languages, please click the globe icon at the bottom of your screen, your bar, and you can select that language. I do see 1 hand raised from Yajaira Ortega. Ms. Ortega, I'm going to give you the permission to talk, and you may begin speaking.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Yahaira Ortega, and I am the Policy and Advocacy Associate for Thrive Alliance. Before I begin, we want to thank you all for volunteering your time for this vital process. I'm here today to respectfully request more time for this community process. As you may be aware, Thrive Alliance has been shouting from the rooftops, trying to engage more community members. Well, we did it. We are working with 13 other local organizations who plan to propose a map next week. We want to be sure there is still time for discussion of this and any other proposals. Therefore, we ask you, please add 1 more commission meeting to continue discussing map proposals and extend the map submission deadline. Please consider that providing additional time for this community engagement will increase faith in the process and will help lead to a better map. Thank you.
We can't hear you. You're mute.
Sorry, I'm running into issues now, sorry. Mr. Nogales, I'm going to give you the permission to talk. Please proceed.
Thank you, Suki. I'm sorry, do I have 3 minutes or 2 minutes? I just wanted to make sure in terms of
2
time.
minutes.
2 minutes. My name is Mark Nogales. I am the Vice Mayor for the City of South San Francisco. And I appreciate all of the commissioners participating in this process. This is such an important process for our democracy and also for our community. Actually, last week, our city council actually voted in supporting and providing a letter asking that the commission look at unifying the city of South San Francisco. And if I can read the letter really, really quickly, I promise I'll get under 2 minutes. Dear Mr. Lawrence, the County of San Mateo is currently in the process of soliciting public input and evaluating population and demographic changes to identify in the newly released 2020 census to make recommendations for changes to the boundaries for the 5 supervisory districts. South San Francisco is currently unevenly split between 2 districts, with some areas in District 1 represented by Supervisor Pine and District 5 represented by Supervisor Canepa. On behalf of our community, we respectfully request that the commission consider designating the entire city of South San Francisco within 1 supervisory district to ensure equity and equal representation, rather than rebalancing districts as have been done in the past. We believe that such designation would best serve the commission's criteria of respecting the geographical integrity of local neighborhoods, communities of interest, cities, and census designated places in a manner that minimizes their division. Having the entire city within 1 supervisory district would also aid South San Francisco residents in clear understanding in which district they reside, and to recognize which supervisor represents them. The irregular boundaries of the current district are confusing for many residents, and we believe that the level of public involvement and participation in past redistricting efforts has been limited due to this supervisory division. South San Francisco acknowledges and thank you and your fellow commissioners for your willingness to volunteer to serve on this district line advisory commission. And we thank you for your thoughtful consideration of this recommendation, signed by the Mayor Mark Diego. And I'd just like to reiterate that the City Council did support this unanimously. So I look forward to this continuing conversation. I look forward to talking to the members there if they have any further questions. So I appreciate it, your time, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Nogales. Maybe I'll allow 10 more seconds for additional speakers that wish to speak. And for the record, Commissioner Chow, are you present now?
Yes, I'm sorry. Good evening.
Okay.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
I'll mark you present. Thank you. Okay, I do see one additional hand. This will be the last speaker for public comment. Okay, Christian, I'm giving you the permission to talk. Please proceed.
Good evening, commissioners. Thank you so much for volunteering your time and energy to be part of this commission. As a civic engagement community organizer, I appreciate all the opportunities you've provided to engage with the public to make sure our redistricting process is more equitable and accessible. My name is Christopher Chin, and I am a community advocate on the voting rights team with Asian Americans Advancing Justice Asian Law Caucus. I'm calling in today in support of my colleagues at Thrive to respectfully request at least 1 additional meeting be added to the commission's calendar to continue the discussion of draft map proposals. We believe there are still many community voices who have not had the opportunity to engage with the redistricting process this year. With all the changes due to COVID impacting the capacity for in-person outreach, we are concerned that the most marginalized of our community have not had the chance to provide feedback on the commission's draft maps. It's important that all San Mateo County residents are given the opportunity to provide input on their communities of interest and to share how they will be impacted by these map proposals. Currently, the Asian Law Caucus is collaborating with Thrive and 13 different community-based organizations in San Mateo County to provide additional input on the commission's draft maps. While we are still planning to submit public comment and a draft map before the commission's deadline next Thursday, October 28th, adding another meeting to the commission's calendar would allow for adequate time for these maps and other community proposals to be reviewed. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Chen. Mr. Chair, I do have another hand raised. Cindy Crow-Arga, I'll give you the permission to speak. Please proceed.
Yes, I'm just concerned that you're saying this is all the public comment, or will we be able to comment later on as well?
You will be able to comment on specific maps under public hearing for item number 6.
Okay.
Of a general public comment, you can make it here.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Of course. Mr. Chair, that was the last public comment for item number 2.
Okay, great. Then I'll move to item 3, which is I asked for approval to set the agenda for tonight's meeting.
I move.
I second.
That was
Do
Ms.
roll call.
Thank you.
Ms. Vanderpali, yeah.
Perfect, yes. First by Vanderpali, seconded by Davis. Thank you. I'll take the roll call now. Commissioner Azos,
Yes.
Mr. Vanderpali,
Yes.
Mr. Barber,
Yes.
Mr. Butts,
Yes.
Mr. Chow,
Yes.
Commissioner Chan,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Dinan,
Yes.
Commissioner Espinoza,
Yes.
Commissioner Manzan Ruiz,
Yes.
Albert,
Aye.
Commissioner Romero.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Salander,
Yes.
Chair Lawrence.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes with Commissioner Guerrero being absent.
Okay. Thank you. Let's move to item 4, which is the approval of the minutes. Again, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the minutes.
I second.
Thank you. I'll take the roll call. Commissioner Azos,
Yes.
Mr. Vanderpali,
Yes.
Mr. Barber,
Yes.
Mr. Betzel,
Yes.
Mr. Chan,
Yes.
Mr. Ch-
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Dinan,
Yes.
Commissioner Espinoza.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Manzan Ruiz,
Yes.
Mr. Albert,
Aye.
Mr. Romero,
Yes.
Mr. Salander,
Yes.
Chair Lawrence.
Yes.
Thank you. The minutes are approved with the Commissioner Guerrero being absent. Please proceed.
Okay. Item 5 on our agenda tonight is the county manager's report from Mr. Mates.
Good evening, honorable members of this commission. Thank you very much for your service and also for having me report today. I'm going to keep my report very short. It's in response to the request last week where we had some questions from the public comment, and it was requested that I use a brief moment just to respond to a couple of those questions. The two that I went back through the transcript of the meeting, and the two questions I saw that were able to be answered by staff. One of them was a question about transparency of the decision-making process and how would the commission go about balancing the priorities of the redistricting process. That one is a pretty simple answer. It's this process right now. The commission has a meeting tonight and tomorrow, and the commission cannot act but through a public vote at a public meeting like this. And so the process on deciding on a map for the commission to recommend is through this transparent process of these meetings. The other question that came in through public comment last time around was about the outreach to communities. Particularly, the question was about outreach to communities, including the migrant farm workers on the South Coast and immigrant populations on the coast. On that, as I've described in prior meetings, there has been a really multi-channel, multi-pronged approach to the outreach in the community based on learnings that we have from our census outreach and our pandemic outreach, where we really learned that you need to have outreach through multiple channels in order to reach all parts of our county. So we have general outreach, including on local and regional, traditional and social media, the county's Twitter account, the Chronicle, the Mercury, the Daily News, Half Moon Bay Review, just to name a few. We also have outreach to our ethnic and in-language local media, including Singtao, El Reportero, and Philippine News, specifically with respect to outreach to the South Coast and the immigrant and farm worker communities identified by this comment. We have had a number of different channels, including local Spanish radio advertisements, Spanish advertisements in the Half Moon Bay Review and the Pacifica Tribune, social media messages that are shared with a network of over 400 community organizations, including Puente, which is very active with our farm worker community on the coast, as well as targeted mailings to these what we consider in the census world, these hard to count communities. And we have outreach to over 27,000 households with direct mailings to give them information about your work. Since we last spoke, the outreach has continued. We have had in-person outreach events in every current supervisorial district. Just last night, our outreach team was in North Fair Oaks at the Siena Youth Center and collected over 20 completed community of interest surveys. So the public input is continuing to come in. Thank you to those commissioners who have helped us with in-person events, as well as appearing at city council meetings to help spread the word. At this point, we are at, I think, about 190 public comment on our public comment tracker on the website. So as you have all been following it, that number has increased quite a bit over the last couple of weeks. And with that, I complete my county manager's report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mates. Our next item on the agenda is the public hearing. Like a motion to open public hearing.
Chair Lawrence?
Yes.
I believe Commissioner Chan had a question or a comment.
Okay. Commissioner Chen.
Yes. Deputy Manager Mates, I just had a clarifying question. You said the meetings today and tomorrow. Do you mean next week in terms of this commission's meetings?
Thank you, Commissioner Chan. Absolutely. Last meeting, I also messed up the month. I'm sorry. I was talking too fast. Absolutely. The meetings are today, October 21st, and the next meeting is October 28th. Thank you very much for catching that.
Thank you.
And Chair Lawrence, before we do the action to open the public hearing, we should do 6A, hear from Kristen.
Oh, okay. You're right. Is Kristen with us? Yes, I see her. Please proceed.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm so glad to see so many members of the public tuning in, and I was so happy to hear that we're receiving so many public comments. That is wonderful news. I know a lot of hard work has gone into that. I'm going to share my screen. I'm not going to talk very long. I just want to share a couple updates to the website and very quickly just have my screen available as the discussion flows about maps. So I am sharing my screen now. I wanted to show on the website, which if anyone hasn't visited it, it's smcdistrictlines.org. And when you go from the homepage, you can click on draw a map, of course, to draw maps and submit them. I'm going to click draft maps because I just wanted to show a couple of resources that I added today in response to some of the feedback we heard from the public at the previous meeting. So this is just a couple pieces of reference data here that can be really helpful when you are evaluating the draft maps, the current district boundaries, or if you are drawing your own maps. So first, there is this PDF here that is the current district demographics. So if you've looked at any of the draft maps, each of the draft maps are accompanied. The first page is the map, the second page is the demographic report. And for comparison purposes, it's important for the public to have the same exact demographic report for the current districts. And the other thing you'll see on this current map demographics is the total deviation, which is under 10%. And I just want to take this opportunity to remind everyone that that is a legally permissible total population deviation. From a legal standpoint, these 5 districts are population balanced. However, considering the criteria under the Fair Maps Act and from the feedback we are hearing from different communities around the county, there are changes that are being put on the table and considered. But just keeping in mind that we are still thinking about population equality. So that is there for comparison purposes. And then there was also a request, and I think this is helpful, particularly for those folks who are drawing maps, and that's including myself as I am seeing if I can solve some of these challenges here. is the population for the county by incorporated and unincorporated area. So as folks may know, there are 20 cities in San Mateo County. So I have on this PDF here, it's the cities first, okay, all the way through to Colma, organized from the largest population in 2020 per the census to the smallest, right? So from San Mateo being the largest city down to Colma. And then we have our unincorporated areas, some of which are places, right, or census designated places, and some aren't. So it could be useful for folks to see this, that the vast majority of folks in San Mateo County are living in incorporated areas. There are 63,205 residents living in unincorporated areas. And so from unincorporated down through Loma Mar, you can see population for those places. Why do we care about this? A lot of the conversation at the previous meeting, looking at draft maps, talked about dividing up cities. And we already heard public comment again, where there are cities that do not want to be divided. And the current district map does divide 5 cities. So one of the things that we have looked closely at and continue to look closely at is dividing our cities. But when we're thinking about that population equality, down here is the ideal size of a supervisorial district, 153,083 people. So keeping in mind that our 2 largest cities in the county are already getting close to being the size of a supervisorial district. So San Mateo and Daly City have to just add, right, a little bit less than 50,000 people, and then they would be the size of a district, right? So just so folks are a little bit aware of the reason why cities are divided is primarily to population balance the maps. So obviously, all of this is just resources and data. We want to encourage you to continue to submit your maps either through the paper map tool or one of our 2 online tools. We have gotten submissions through District R, which is the very easy to use tool. And we have, I don't know if we've received submissions through Maptitude. This is a more complicated and advanced tool, as you can kind of see from these screenshots here. However, Maptitude is the tool that we use, and there's absolutely no reason not to give the public all the same tools that the demographers are using. So that's what I wanted to show. And then if we do go to this review map, which by the way, if you're on the draft map page, linked at the bottom is, so there's PDFs of all of the maps that were proposed and presented at the previous meeting, but then there's an interactive review map. So that's what I'm looking at here, the interactive review map. And I do want to point out that at the previous meeting, the NDC coast map was voted by the commission to be removed from consideration. So it is still here on the website for transparency purposes, but we will add a note that it has been removed from the commission's consideration. All of these maps, as we talk about them, I'm happy to zoom in and out. What I have up right now is NDC's Minimal Change Map. That was the one that seemed, at least at the previous meeting, maybe one of the focus maps that we would want to look at in more detail going forward. I look forward to hearing more comments and questions from the commissioners. And thank you. I'll stop my share for now, and I can bring it back at any moment.
Okay, we have 3 hands raised with questions. I'll start with Commissioner Bledsoe.
Thank you. I have 2 questions for Kristen, and I'll just ask them and then you can figure out how you want to answer them. The first one is, it is my belief that the city of San Mateo is going through their own districting process right now. And so how will that impact this is one question. The second question is, and maybe I'm remiss in how I'm looking at the map. I mean, there's been a lot of comments about Belmont being split, and I can't tell from the map how Belmont is split between the two districts. Is it evenly, or is there a way to figure out the way that the lines have been drawn?
Excellent questions. So to the first question, the cities in the county that do have by-district elections are also redistricting. That process is totally separate. It can be very confusing to members of the public because after every census, every 10 years, every level of our government where we have elections by district, there is a redistricting process. However, the county process is moving with a much faster pace because the county's deadline is December 15th. So, and of course, just so the public knows, the reason for that December deadline coming down from the state of California is because there is a June election for the county. So that deadline is driven by the election. Many of our cities don't have city level elections until November. So their deadline for redistricting extends into 2022. So while the city of San Mateo is redistricting and other cities in the county as well, their process is going to go on for a little bit of a longer trajectory than the counties. The other thing I can do, so for your question about Belmont being split, were you asking about in the NDC Minimal Change Map? The proposed draft?
Yes.
I think she may be asking about the current split.
I was actually asking about both.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I can do is pull up on my screen my redistricting software, which will show things. We can manipulate the view a little bit better than you can on the interactive review map. So if you want, I can go ahead and pull that up while we listen to the next person's questions and come back to it.
Please proceed.
That would be great.
Did you want to call on Mr. Albert next while Kristen searches?
We can. Mr. Albert, do you want to go now while she's pulling up the map?
I am happy to do so, Chair Lawrence, but my question actually was to ask Kristen. She made a comment that she didn't think there had been any Maptitude maps submitted. And since that's the tool I used to prepare the map that I submitted, I just wanted to make sure I didn't mess up the submission process.
When did you submit it?
The day before our prior meeting.
And and it wasn't presented at the previous meeting?
No, I didn't expect it to be because it was literally, I think I sent it in at like 4 o'clock the day before or something like that.
Yeah, so I should have been presenting it tonight. Unfortunately, my boss has been in Arizona all week, and we had 2 of our consultants had a death in the family, and so I just will apologize that is an oversight on our part, and we should have received and processed and presented that map. We can get it up on the website tomorrow by the end of the day, because that's important for the public to be able to see. And perhaps there are others that have been submitted on Maptitude as well. So I will make sure that before the end of the day tomorrow, anything that's on Maptitude has been processed and gets up as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
To the chair, I have a question for Kristen.
We have a couple people. Let's stay in order.
Okay, sure. I'm sorry. I don't have the raise number showing up for me.
Right. Commissioner Azo had his hand raised.
Hi, thank you. I think at the last meeting, we talked about some other varieties of maps that we were interested in seeing or having drawn up. I remember that Commissioner Olbert was asking for one in particular, merging the hillsides of a variety of cities. I know that there were some others suggested by various commissioners. Did you guys prepare those? Are they available at this point?
So I went over this list of suggestions, and actually the NDC Minimal Change Map meets these. So let me run down it really quickly, and I can also share my screen and pull up that map. But my notes were a map that keeps East Palo Alto, North Fair Oaks, Redwood City, and Bellhaven in the same district, which is what the minimum change map does. Keeping the hills of Burlingame with the city of Burlingame, the hills of San Mateo with the city of San Mateo. And let me pull up this map just so we can look at it together as I run down these priorities that we heard from commissioners at the previous meeting. Okay, so this is the NDC Minimal Change Map. And then of course I can't see my notes. Okay, so then my other notes were combining the coast and unincorporated communities and keeping Daly City together. So this map does keep Daly City together. It doesn't divide it. I think the biggest challenge, and as I've sat down to start trying to figure out how to balance out these things, the biggest challenge is trying to create a district for the coast side that does not divide, particularly these cities in the northern part of the county, because even when you put together the coastal communities and some of the unincorporated areas in the southern part of the county and in the hills along 280, you still don't get to that 153,083 ideal number. So you do have to pull. And as you can see, this NDC map here, it's pulling into Atherton and San Carlos and splitting Belmont. So in order to get that population, the current map pulls, just for comparison's purpose, so you can see that the current map, we can reload this. The current district boundaries. Well, let's see. Make this bigger. The minimal change and the current district boundaries are very similar. Oh, I see. I need to just zoom in here. Still dividing South San Francisco. And then the NDC minimal change. Let me switch back because it really is minimal change here. And then you can see where Belmont is being divided here. Let me flip back and see. So you see how that line has moved a little bit there.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And again, if to Commissioner Bledsoe's point, I can pull this up. I don't know if this is helpful or if you want to see even more detail on this, on the other piece of software, but yeah, so see, this doesn't as clearly show the boundaries of Belmont. They're sort of in this gold color here. Yeah. But flipping back, this is of course the current, and then the NDC minimal change. So you can see how Belmont is being split.
Still split, yeah.
I was working on trying to find a map that did not do this split, but the split will have to happen somewhere for population balance, as I was talking about. So, you know, it's really a question of where do we do that split? Does the split happen in Pacifica? Does the split happen in San Carlos, Redwood City? Where does it happen?
Ms. Day, we had 5 cities that were split in the prior. Are the same 5 cities still split?
No, in the NDC minimal change map, no. Let me stop sharing so that I can pull up my notes. In the NDC minimal change map, well, there's the city focus map that only splits 2 cities.
which are Redwood City and Burlingame, which I can show you that one in a moment. In the minimal change map, I know Belmont is split, and San Bruno and South San Francisco. So I think that's 3 in the minimal change.
Three in the minimal change.
2 in the city focus, 3 in the minimal change, and with the current boundaries, it is 5 cities split.
Okay.
And we can zoom in on any of those, just let me know.
Okay. And the minimal change is with the least deviation?
The minimal change is the minimal change from the current boundaries.
From the current boundaries, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so one last question on the minimal change map, and you may be able to show that directly here. Do you have the populations of the relative populations of the districts?
Not here. I can show that to you here, although this right now is the current district boundaries because I was trying to zoom in on that. Let me open. I'll stop my share and open that where you can see the population. If we want to move to the next question while I'm opening that.
Oh, sorry, I found it via the PDF as well. Thank you very much.
Oh, perfect. Yes.
Then the chair will recognize Commissioner Chow.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I'm having some challenges to find, where the boundary for a city, let's say South San Francisco, and I think I see a little bit of that when Kristen was showing the line. Is that the boundary of the cities? Because I hear a lot of the comments, people doesn't want to split the city. So I think one major point will be having one city, all in one, and then draw the district around it. So is there a way to see on the map clearly where the boundary of each city?
Yes, and I'm going to try to pull that up right now.
And Commissioner Bonderpolly, if you wish to speak, can you click on the raise hand feature so your name comes up on the list?
That's the problem, Suki. I don't have the raise hand feature on my screen. That is the issue I have. That's why I always have to say go through the chair. That's my biggest issue. And I updated my Zoom.
On the list. Right.
No worries. Take your time. My apologies. I just don't have that feature, and that's a challenge. Yeah.
I really appreciate that population. It gives me a good view of what I need to add and subtract. Thank you, Kristen.
Sure. All right. So here we're looking at the minimal change map. And what you can see in purple are the city boundaries. So we want to zoom in here in this area so we can see in the minimal change map, you can see by the colors where San Bruno is being split, right? And also where South San Francisco is being split.
Oh, okay. So you can only see the boundaries and the NDC minimum change. I mean, if you have a template.
I can show you many things, right? There's the streets. I can show you.
Okay.
I mean, I think it was more difficult to see the city boundaries on the interactive review map. So that's why I wanted to pull that up here. And then they also have here the city population numbers as well.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay, I did save a map, but I don't know where did it go. It goes to districtout.org.
Yeah, do you want to see District R?
Yeah, because I know I use District Out for that.
Sure, I can pull that up.
Thank you. I don't want to take other people's time.
This is, I think, very useful to everyone, including members of the public. So
thank you.
I appreciate that.
While she's pulling it up, Commissioner Bandra, you want to ask your question?
Sure. This is for Christine only, actually. Christine, I was looking at one of the maps where it was showing the population areas by unincorporated and incorporated areas, as well as the population size. So the best thing we can add there would be district. If you can add which district currently that incorporated and unincorporated belongs to, and if you can give us an Excel doc, we would really appreciate it, because
keeping in mind that for the cities that are split, I would have to give you what number of people are in each of the districts that city
appreciate that
split. Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion,
because that way we really don't have to draw the maps. We can just look at that data. Really, I mean, this is cheating. You can draw the maps for us, but what we can look at basically the number of population and look at the unincorporated areas, we can total it up and we can see really without dividing the cities, how can we accomplish the goal, right? Keeping some of the unincorporated areas together, and then maybe the cities closest to the unincorporated areas, maybe we include that so that they don't have to, remember somebody's running from that area, they don't have to go far to do their campaign. It's right next door to them, because we do need to reach that 150,000 membership, for a district. Just keep that in mind. So I think just giving that information as soon as you can, we would really appreciate it. That will make our life so much easier. Thank you, Kristen.
Absolutely. And just keeping in mind that it's not only a numbers game, we are required to consider the other criteria under the Fair Maps Act. But I agree with Commissioner Bandrapalli that could be very useful information.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Commissioner Espinosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I submitted a map in a very rough draft form to Suki and Justin. Just curious if you received that for you to draft following the city boundaries.
We got the map, right? And I believe Mr. Mates, do we need to send that off to Kristen, or she automatically gets it?
I apologize. I had to step away for a second. I apologize. Commissioner Espinosa-Murray, what was the question?
So I submitted a map to you and Suki via email to submit to Kristen for her to refine. I submitted a rough draft map and asked that NDC follow city boundaries, try to minimize the splitting of cities. So
yes, that was forwarded on to NDC.
Okay. And is there, I would assume, Kristen, maybe you're not aware, would think so?
I'm checking right now to see if I got that. And that would have come from you, Justin?
Yes.
If you could resend that would be great.
Okay. I think the bottom line though is that you don't have another map along those lines tonight ready to show.
Oh, I do not have a new map, no. Which I do, to the extent that it's possible to draw, we will draw. I do think we're balancing the big challenge that it seems like we're facing is which cities to divide. So I do look forward to seeing Commissioner Espinosa-Murray's, maybe you had some success there. I look forward to working with that one and producing the demographic report on that too.
Justin sent it to you on Monday at 3:14 p.m.
That's helpful. Let me see if I can find it.
It's all good. I understand you're busy, but Kristen, to your point, as you were speaking, I was like, yep, I encountered, we're all going to encounter those issues that it is really, like, for everyone here, it is actually impossible to have a map that doesn't split up cities or areas. Right. That's going to happen. It's just like what we're willing to give up to split. I try to minimize that in that map, but given that there is new 2020 census data that just uploaded and all that, Kristen, I wanted to make sure that you drew it to perfection of the city boundaries, so that my deviation was.
Got it. Found it.
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Parks, would you just remind us that the 3 cities that will be split versus the 5 that were split in the prior district lines?
Yeah, so in the NDC city focus map, there are 2 cities split, Redwood City and Burlingame. And in the NDC minimal change map, I believe it is San Bruno, South San Francisco, and Belmont.
Okay. Okay.
Is Menlo Park split, Ms. Parks?
In which one?
The minimal changes map.
Yeah, let me look at that. I don't think it is, but I'm looking at it because I know it is in the area where, yeah, Menlo Park is not split, no.
Okay. Chair recognizes Commissioner Chow.
Yes. Okay. I want to know if the only way we can help our constituents to submit the map is through sending it to Mr. Mays and Suki, or can we actually do that in the public comment? Because we don't want to inundate Mr. Mays' email box.
So through the chair, if I may, so if you have drawn a map in Maptitude or District R, you can submit it through the website. And I think we should probably just clarify. The ordinary process is when you submit those, they would go, NDC will see them, they will be on the website, and NDC will process them and produce that demographics report so everyone can see it. Now, as Ms. Park said earlier, it sounds like NDC had some capacity and resource issues in the last week and wasn't able to get through all of the submitted maps. So for anyone who submitted maps on behalf of NDC and the county, I'm going to apologize that they aren't ready for the commission's discussion this evening. But if you want to submit a map, a prepared map, that you've gone through District R and Maptitude and you prepared those maps, that is the way to submit them. Alternatively, some of the commissioners didn't draw a map, but had some very defined points that they wanted to provide for NDC to draw a map based on those points, similar to what Commissioner Obert did last week, where he defined a sort of map that he would like to see. And under an ordinary circumstance, and certainly by next meeting, NDC will take those points and draw those requested maps to the extent feasible, as we've been mentioning today, that there is some give and take, and sometimes not everything may be captured. But those are the 2 ways. If one of the commissioners has some specific ideas as to how they would like NDC to prepare a map, you can share them with Kristen tonight, Ms. Parks tonight, or you can send them to me. In terms of the public or the commissioners, if you actually want to draw a map, it is through the District R and Maptitude sites, the links, which you can get to from our website, smcdistrictlines.org.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Mays. Chair recognizes Commissioner Obert.
Thank you, Jim. A comment, actually two quick comments. One is, Justin, thank you for that explanation you just gave, but just to clarify, I did verbally describe the map that I had submitted last time. However, I actually created it in Maptitude and thought I had submitted it through Maptitude. No, I pressed the submit button and it said, great, you submitted a map. So I just mentioned that because I'm not sure how it fell through the cracks, but it either, well, I thought I clicked on the submission button, but didn't actually submit it and I needed to do something else, or it got submitted and just, it didn't get noticed.
Yeah, I'll find that out for you tomorrow. Unfortunately, I don't have direct access to that Maptitude submission box, but my boss absolutely does. I wanted to really quickly go back to Brian's question, just to clarify. I think I said the wrong thing there. The NDC minimal change map, it looks to me, and I'll show you, that it does divide Menlo Park. It's the city focus map that doesn't divide Menlo Park. So let me show you what I'm looking at here. But it looks like it's dividing Menlo Park here, if you can see this, right in the exact same spot that the current map is doing it, at El Camino. Zoom in there. So just to clarify that Menlo Park is being split in this minimal change map as it's being split in the current district map. It is the city focus map that does not split Menlo Park.
And so just to kind of bring that back around and further clarify, I think currently 4 cities are split and under the minimal change, I think it's 4. I think it's South San Francisco, Menlo Park, Belmont, and
San Bruno.
San Bruno.
San Bruno. Yeah,
I
you're
think
correct. So it is 4 in the minimal change, 5 in the current districts, and 2 in the city focus. And if anyone out there can draw a map that doesn't divide any cities, maybe they'll get a prize. I don't know. We'll bake them a cake.
Jim, can I finish my second comment?
Please. Yes.
The second comment, and this may be more appropriate to item 6D when we actually come back into discussion, but what we've been talking about here just now makes me feel even more strongly something I think I tried to describe last week. I think we're not going to be able to do our task actually if we sort of focus on every individual map iteration that we could possibly do, because there's probably an infinite number of them. I almost feel like what the commission might need to be thinking about doing is deciding whether or not they agree with the assertion that we're going to have to split some communities, which I suspect we do. I'm not saying I deny that. I just think we'd have to just collectively agree that we think that is going to have to be done. And then I think maybe what we need to do is talk about and decide on what rules we would have for which communities we're going to split. I mean, you could have a rule that says, well, if it was split before, we're going to split it again just so we don't disrupt anything. Or you could have a rule saying, if it was split before, that's the one thing that we're going to put back together again, because it's not fair that people get split over all time. Or maybe you could say, we have 2 cities that are really big individually and almost the size of districts themselves. Maybe we should split them up because they're the biggest ones. And otherwise, we're going to be splitting little communities that are already small. I'm not saying which one of those things is what we ought to do. I'm just saying I have a funny feeling we're going to have to move our discussion in that kind of direction, because I don't otherwise see how we're going to be able to come together on a map or even a set of maps. So I just wanted a chance to say that. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Obert. I agree too that, and it appears that if we follow the guidelines, both state and federal, it's more likely than not, we're going to have to make a split of some cities. I don't know if there's any existing rules or regulations around that, or do we have to come up with them, because it is getting late in the process to introduce, a new set of rules or guidelines or whatever going forward. So let me ask our Illustrious County Council to provide us with some guidance there.
Sure. I mean, there's the legal answer, which I think you all know pretty well at this point, which is that, there is a certain ordinality to consider, right? If you're deciding whether to split, for example, a community of interest and a city or census designated area, you're going to split the city or census designated area, right? You got to keep the community of interest intact. So there's that kind of guidepost. But I think, Commissioner Obert's comment was kind of added a practical layer to kind of those legal considerations too, right? Kind of what can you all talk about now that you think you can do while you're kind of waiting for these final maps to figure out kind of what you think is kind of a practical and kind of effective way to negotiate those issues, which I think is super helpful. So kind of, beyond the legal criteria we have, you are kind of left with the kind of those practical kind of decisions to make, right? So.
Thank you. Yeah. Question from Ms. Parks, and I'll come back to you, Mr. Commissioner Maison. Can we see a map that we say, even though assume that we have to split a city, we say we took the approach that we're not going to split cities that were split before. We're going to try to lessen their pain, allow them to stay together, and see both of those, what those 2 maps will look like. Did I explain that properly?
So to clarify, a map that doesn't split the cities that were split before, so those
Correct.
5. Yes, that we can definitely attempt that. Absolutely.
Okay.
So Kristen, you keep saying 5, and I don't, are you sure it's not 4? I think it's Menlo Park, San Bruno, South San Francisco, and Belmont that was split before and are split in the minimal change map. If there's a 5th city, I may have missed it, but I think it's 4.
Yeah, let me double check that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the same 4 cities are split in the existing map and the minimal change map.
Right. Chair recognizes Commissioner Monzon.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening to everybody. It's just, I like to see all the energy in the room. Learning a lot from everybody. But I want to express something that I experienced after our last meeting. Something didn't feel right to me the next day. I like to digest things and go back and forth, and it just didn't feel right in what I saw, what I noticed, what I felt during in one particular event of a previous meeting. The reason that I joined, and I see that the interest for everybody here is to be inclusive, to be inviting, to listen to everybody. And with the action that I noticed last week, I didn't feel that way. Just to give a little bit of background for some of the commissioners or participants tonight that they were not here, not this meeting last time. It was about a map that was dividing the coast side, and there was respectable point of view from maybe a few people, and it just I didn't feel like we moved to delete that map, and I was thinking the person that drew that map took the effort, that person participated, and we deleted. I don't feel like that is inviting, encouraging, inclusive. If I'm mistaken, but that's my perception. What I would like to suggest is, if we will encounter some maps that it will not align with our point of view. We represent our cities. We have common interests beyond the numbers, right? And we kind of in a difficult situation. So what I would like to suggest, if we can consider, please, is if there is a map that doesn't line up with the way you see your district or the residents of the city that you represent, let's wait a little bit longer. As we heard tonight, the public is asking for more meetings before we start deleting maps because they don't line up with the way we see our districts. Everything that we do and we say in these meetings has to be, first of all, inviting, and I think we do, but that didn't feel that way last time. I really didn't like it. Deleting a map is putting like a thump on top of the person that person did the effort. That map perhaps will not make it on the top maps. We don't know, but let's give them the opportunity to move along, because there are people watching, there are people listening, people asking in our cities. And we, the 15 members and the county manager's office team, we are the example of our communities. Whatever we do, however we act, is the same thing that will be in our communities. So I would like to set a tone of inviting, listening, and what I mean listening in the sense of a map. If the map comes in dividing, let's review it. Let's let it, let it go through the process. I will please ask to not delete maps until we go through the process. I just didn't feel inviting that event last time. And I learned a few things from that meeting. And it set a tone of the deleting process, and also set a tone. There is a section that they cannot be moved. They don't want to be moved, and I respect that. And we also have our desires on different cities, and we would like to see some changes. But this way, if we set the tone that we cannot move too much because we don't agree, it will make it worse. For example, South City cannot be any changes because we're gridlocked. We're stuck. We cannot move. So that was the other thing that I learned. And one more thing is one comment resonant on that meeting. The comment was that the COSI didn't feel represented. I will use a different terminology. I will use, maybe because the district is too large, there is some disengagement. And I will leave it as that, as a disengagement. Maybe it's too big. Perhaps, even though we're here on this commission to suggest the most accurate maps to the Board of Supervisors, that's our mission. Or we also mentioned last time that we should put on future items on our future meetings to be educated what would be the process to have more districts, and we can solve other problems. Because for me, just as an analogy, if you have a teacher with 45 students, maybe it's time to split, right? Maybe it's time to have two classrooms, 2 teachers. So same thing if the communities are growing, maybe 5 districts are getting to a limit. Maybe we should look into the possibilities, and maybe along with the maps that we're going to suggest in December 15, we can suggest there is a strong desire of the communities that we would like to have a better engagement through our supervisors by having more supervisors that will have the opportunity to reach to these communities. I hope that makes sense. My intention is to collaborate. I do respect everybody's point of view. But I would like to encourage that there is people watching us, listening us, they gotta feel the same way. If I felt that way being among us, there's many people outside that they feel the same thing. I'm very clear that everybody here is, we're one, but we have hundreds and thousands representing our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mazon, for those comments. We've received a number of comments, and one of the things I would like to put on the table is that we probably should have a postmortem of the process in the last meeting, so that all the commissioners can look back and make suggestions, recommendations. So going forward, maybe we can improve this. I don't know, but I wanted to just throw it out at a later time. But that is the one thing that I've been thinking about. But thank you for your comments. Are there any other comments from the commissioners?
To the chair, I wanted to ask Christine how long it's going to take her to give us that raw data that I requested, number 1. And number 2, I had community meetings. I presented to Burlingame Lions Club. I presented to other, a lot of residents in Burlingame, and they strongly feel that they want to be kept. No changes from the city of Burlingame. It's loud and clear to me. And I don't know if a lot of them are planning to submit their public comments through, to the district lines email. I'm not sure how many have done it, and I have a few packet with me that I'm going to take a picture and send it to to Justin and Suki. So I just want to share that, and I'm also planning to present to Commission on Status of Women on Tuesday. And as Thrive requested, I am also requesting if there is any possibility we need to push the date. What is the impact? I would like to discuss that. What is the impact if we push the date to maybe November 1st week? What is the worst thing that could happen? I would like to hear from the council and get some guidance on that, because this is a one-time change we are making, and it only happens once in 10 years. So it is critical that if what is the worst thing that could happen if we tell the Board of Supervisors we need more time? Yes, it is a law, whatever California state is suggesting, but there will be, some leeway, or, what can we do basically? What are our options? Can we
So I
write a
can
letter?
answer that. I'm sorry, there are no options that involve more time. I mean, I can't say, I'm not disregarding the comment. I totally understand it. It's very reasonable. I'm extremely sympathetic, but there is no more time option.
So is there a possibility that we could give less time to the Board of Supervisors to review? Because everybody has to take that, right?
So,
yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Can we make a pitch to the Board of Supervisors? Say we only give them, instead of, like the policy, we have to give X number of days to publish and all of that. Make an exception, and can we do that? I'm asking for your guidance.
The next meeting of the Board of Supervisors is the meeting at which the Board of Supervisors would like us to present your recommendation. So there's no way for us to make a pitch to the Board of Supervisors, because the next meeting is the meeting at which they're expecting your recommendation.
Right, but then, no, I'm just saying that, yes, they are requesting, I understand that. Can we go and say this is not possible? Can we have a special meeting and do that? Can we have a special meeting with Board of Supervisors just to address the redistricting process, just to address our recommendations? Can we ask Board of Supervisors to do that? Just how we have special meetings with District Council. Can we have a special meeting with the Board of Supervisors and do that? Because this is really important. We cannot just say follow the normal process that we go through for a lot of decisions that we make. This is really important. So I want to see all the possibilities. I know you're saying not possible, but I'm just saying we need to have a meeting with Board of Supervisors. Happy to do that. Maybe Justin Mitz can have that meeting for all of us. Then we can make our case why we need more time.
We can certainly take your request to the Board of, well, we can't take your request to the entire Board of Supervisors. We can take your request to 2 members of the Board of Supervisors, but I think you need to proceed as if you need to complete your task in the time that the Board of Supervisors gave you.
I understand, David, but as you heard already from the members of the public, the maps are not even ready. As you just saw, Christian is not ready to present tonight. And then whatever the commissioners were posted, they are not there right now. I mean, Espinazo commissioner, he sent his map and we can't see that map. So what I'm saying is, because of those issues, we need to make arrangements, because it's not just one thing. There are like, what are we discussing tonight? I mean, whatever maps that were submitted, we can't see them. And the new maps, we still need to create, and that's going to take time.
Commissioner Pedro, I think that let's allow
Sure. I'm sorry. I'm just sharing my thoughts.
We understand you. We know how you feel about this. Let's allow David to pursue that, but we should continue as if we don't have a change. He will make that request. If there's a change, I'm sure he'll get back to us in a timely fashion. Chair recognizes Mr. Commissioner Barber.
Thank you, Chair Lawrence. My question is for Ms. Parks. Is there any obvious problems with the minimal change map, such as like new divisions of communities of interest, or does that minimal change map improve some of the issues we have outstanding in the current map and in the current district lines?
So our intention with the minimal changes map was to achieve more population equality than the current map, while preserving to the extent possible and minimizing changes. Really what we want when we present maps to this commission is to hear from this commission as to whether that map is an improvement or not. So I do welcome any specific feedback on the minimal change map. I am noting the request from tonight that the problem with the minimal change map for some people is that it still divides the cities that are currently divided. And so I think it's a worthy goal to try to create a map that does not divide those cities in particular.
Well, first of all, before the chair recognizes Commissioner Salazar, there has been improvement because the last time there were 4 cities divided. Now the minimum change is down to 2.
That's the city focus map
That's the
is
city focus
dividing
map.
2.
2. The minimum change is 3 then. So
It's 4 as well. It really is a minimal change.
okay.
Yes, and that should be clear for the record.
Okay.
I think, if I may, Chair Lawrence, I think that's what I'm trying to get at. Is this truly minimal change, or does it move us closer to any of the goals or alleviate any concerns that have been expressed by members of the public?
I think since we have the same 4 cities divided, you know, the general public will see it as almost no change, but it's minimal change from the existing districts.
Right.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Salazar.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to address a little bit of what Commissioner Monson had to say, and then also ask a question related to it. So I totally understand the sentiment that was made, and I think it is super important that we reiterate how grateful we are for that a member of the public submitted a map and they took the time to create an entire one. I think that's really important, and it sparked a lot of public comment and engaged us all. So I just want to say that that was extraordinarily valuable. And as more people submit maps, it will continue to be very valuable. I think what we tried to do during the last meeting was kind of assuage some of the public comment we received in response to that map from the coastal community. They expressed that they really weren't happy with it. Some of the public comment was directed at that map specifically. I think it really turned out public comment from the coast, which was awesome as well. But I would like to ask the council and maybe anyone else who's gone through the process before in 2013, how will we go about the final vote on a map? Do we need to narrow it down first, like further, or are we gonna just like each vote on whichever one we support the most and go from there? Like, how should that process move going forward? Because we do need to narrow it down and pick one eventually. So I'd just like to know if there's any advice from previous experience on how
I can
that
tell
final vote
you.
goes.
Yeah, I can tell you. So last time there were 3 maps that the advisory commission advanced to the board. So in some ways, I feel like more options is worse than better. So I hate to offer you more options, but you actually do have some fairly limited unlimited options. I mean, you could recommend 1, 2, 3, 4 if you wanted to. You know, I think that the more you recommend, the less significance your recommendation is, you know, obviously, but you asked last time they recommended 3.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Commissioner Espinosa.
Yeah, I did want to, similar to Commissioner Solander, I just want to mention that I did not feel that we were exclusive in our process. In fact, I think that we were demonstrating that we were listening to folks from the coast side and hearing, you know, even when our own commissioner, Commissioner Bledsoe, who's from the coast side, that was just, you know, a hard no for us. And I don't think it was meant to discourage folks from submitting maps or to let whoever drafted the map, I believe it was actually NDC that drafted that map, if I'm not mistaken, just send a message like this is not something that would be acceptable for us. But, you know, in light of what Commissioner Monson has expressed, you know, let's consider that and think about how when we look at maps going forward, that we don't disparage any maps or you know, value all of them and view them with respect. So I want to say thank you to Commissioner Monzon for bringing it up, even though I don't necessarily agree with us being exclusive in our process, but it is important that we take into account everyone's public comments and submissions to this commission. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Commissioner
I'm sorry, Chair Lawrence.
Sure.
I'm sorry. I was just I realized I was looking back at the 2013 process, and my answer was incomplete. So they did recommend 3 maps, but they also provided an order of preference as to the 3 maps. So they actually, there's yet another option for you. You can recommend multiple maps and you can provide preference. Yeah, they ordered them in the order in which they preferred them, but you do not have to do that.
Okay, that's super helpful to know. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Obert.
Thank you, Chair Lawrence. This is really, I think, a process question for council, I think, I'd just like some guidance on. We had a discussion a few minutes ago about whether or not David Silverman ought to go request a special meeting with the Board of Supervisors or to get, some additional time for us to work. At what point do we need to take votes on things like that? In other words, is it sufficient that nobody said, well, I disagree? Or is it that when we're getting down to the short strokes here and acting as a commission and we're sending a message as a commission, when do we need to start making motions on ideas and then voting on it to see if that's really what the majority of the commission wants to do?
I think that's, oh, go ahead, David. I think it's a fair and valid point. I think if you're going to want a formal action taken by the commission, you ought to have a motion and a majority vote on that.
Yeah, the problem was, and I agree with you, Brian, 100%. The problem is that it's not an agendized issue. Yeah. So you can't vote on something that's not agendized. What I could act on is, a general request, from the commission for staff to pursue something. And I still think that Commissioner Obert's point is well taken. That, to the extent that staff is receiving direction from the commission, it probably should be a general consensus. But, ultimately, the struggle is that, well, I want to be considerate of all requests, and I'm happy to take any request that's made to, members of the board. The board members who are advising on this process have been very clear that this needs to be presented to the board in November. So in any event, I think I've spoken enough on this.
Thank you, Brian and David. Then, and thank you for reminding me that we can't vote on things that haven't been agendized, which you think I should have known. Then I'll just close by saying that while in a perfect world and maybe in many other worlds, I would certainly support the request that we ask the Board of Supervisors for more time. In the current circumstances, I do not, for reasons which, if anybody wants to hear, I'm happy to explain. But I feel no need to do that, and I just kind of want to get us to do what we can in the time we have, or time we've been allotted. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Commissioner Chan.
Yes, thanks for the time. I wanted to sort of return to the comments on the draft maps as have been presented so far. And I agree with the request to draw a different set of maps that divide a different set of cities. In preparation for this meeting, reviewed as many of the public comments that came in. Yes, all 100, whatever plus of them. Some of them were in Spanish, unfortunately, and so I wasn't able to understand, but and it would be great actually if staff could help with some kind of translation of those so that I don't have to, I would like to be able to account for that, those comments. But the most popular comments, 25 of them were, don't split Belmont, and another set of 25 or so were, don't split the coast south of Pacifica. And so the NDC city focus map splits the coast south of Pacifica, and the Ndc Minimal Change Map continues to split Belmont. So if we want to be responsive to the members of our community, both of these maps don't seem to address those. And so I look forward to seeing the new set of maps based on the discussion we've had, as well as the public comment at the future meeting, which I'm girding myself is going to be a marathon drag out, but I guess that's just what it's going to be. And well, we all kind of signed up for this, and I guess that's what we are signed up for. Thanks.
You know, Commissioner Chan, I agree with you that we don't want to split and certainly want to listen to the public input, but let's keep in mind that the 25 that was vocal, they didn't want to split. You know, if another city didn't say anything, we certainly split at the last moment. I don't feel like we're doing them equal justice just because we split based on 25 inputs. But I agree with you, it's just going to be that marathon where we have to decide, you know, what's the best of the worst of two evils, right? With that, I'll recognize, let me recognize Justin. He had his hand first, and then Commissioner Espinoza.
Thank you. I'm happy to defer to Commissioner Espinoza-Murray. I was just going to raise for the chair, and I appreciate the robust discussion. I don't expect it to end anytime soon, and I just did want to identify on the agenda, we have a public hearing, and we do have a number of members of the public with their hands up. And so we can also, there's an agenda to continue the discussion even after the public hearing. But I certainly, there's only one commissioner with his hand up at this point too, so I don't want to cut anybody off. I defer to Commissioner Espinoza-Murray.
Great. Chair recognizes Commissioner Espinoza.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say those in Spanish, because I am bilingual and I went through all of them, they're all in support of keeping North Fair Oaks together. So if anyone's wondering, that's really what it sums up to. So Nathan, to your list is probably in number 3 is don't split North Fair Oaks. There's probably a dozen of those in there, so we can add those. But it is true. The number of comments should not be the reason why we make a decision, right? We should look to what's fair to the people and to those established communities of interest as a whole. I am also in support of us looking at different ways in which we have to split cities, because I think we've all concluded that it's going to happen, right? And it's just like, who are we splitting and who are we willing to split? I did like Commissioner Olbert's idea of coming up with some criteria of how we establish that. It would make our lives easier if we had that, because as we review maps, we would know, does it check the boxes? Yes or no? If not, let's move on, right? And I agree with him. I don't want to spend 8 hours reviewing maps in our next meeting, especially if we are unable to add an additional meeting. I think, and my feeling and the head nodding, I feel like we're all rowing in the same direction. We would like to see if any cities are split, that there aren't the ones that were split before, just out of fairness to those communities that have been split for a decade. So I just wanted to mention that and just kind of voice what the vibe that I'm getting from all of us as we go forward. So if we do this now or we do this later, when we determine those criteria, I'd love for us to set that and vote on that before we go into review maps. So we have a framework to review the maps under, and we're not shotgun shooting through this process. And sorry for the gun analogy, but yeah, that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Espinoza. Seeing no more hands raised, I'll ask to close this item, move on to open the public hearing.
I motion to open the public hearing.
I second.
Second that.
Thank you. Motion was made by Commissioner Salinger, seconded by Commissioner Chow. I'll take the roll call. Commissioner Azos?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Bandapali?
Yes.
Commissioner Barber?
Yes.
Commissioner Batso?
Yes.
Commissioner Chan?
Yes.
Commissioner Chow?
Yes.
Commissioner Davis?
Yes.
Commissioner Dinan? Commissioner Dinan?
Yes.
Thank you. Perfect. Commissioner Espinoza?
Yes.
Commissioner Manzan Ruiz?
Yes.
Commissioner Albert?
Aye.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Salander?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawrence?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes with Commissioner Guerrero being absent. Public hearing is now open for item number 6, draft maps of supervisorial district boundaries. For those attending the meeting on Zoom video conference, please click the raise hand feature now in order to speak. When you hear your name called, I will send you a request to unmute your mic and you will be given 2 minutes. See 5 hands so far. First speaker will be Cindy Crow-Orgo, followed by Mark Nogales. Cindy, I'm giving you the permission to speak, so please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. First of all, this has been a different meeting than the last meeting. There's been a lot more discussion, a lot more people that are involved than before. I would like to see Commissioner Rudy Espinoza's map. And I'm hoping that he's going to be able to present that. And I appreciate there's a timeline. But the coast side, I'm on the coast side, and we really want to stay one. And I'm going to re-emphasize that we have no representation like the cities. So when you talk about cities being split, okay, but they have their town council, they have their mayors, we have nothing. And so it's really important to look at us. Also, the west to east that one of the commissioners was talking about that was thrown out. Yeah, it was thrown out because it made no sense. I don't know who came up with that map, but I think you need to do that. You need to kind of clear things out and get down to the, what really matters and what the needs are, especially for communities of interest, like the unincorporated areas. So I'm hoping you will take that into consideration, because that's all the representation we have. And I appreciate all your time and, the fact that, you're here, and thank you very much. I hope that we can see some maps that we can talk about and move on. So thank you.
You're muted, Suki.
Sorry. Thank you, Cindy. Next speaker is Mark Nogales, followed by Antonio Lopez. Mark, I'm going to give you permission to speak, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you, Suki. And again, thank you to the commissioners. I know this is not an easy decision, but as someone who lives in South San Francisco, I can tell you that we have 2 county supervisors, 2 assembly members, and 2 state senators. So South San Francisco over the years have been split. You have not been a full district in the county and in the state level. And I think if we're talking about equity and inclusion, we need to recognize that South San Francisco needs to be drawn as one. And as I was looking at the maps, in terms of the city focus map, I'm sorry, in terms of the minimal changes, Westboro area is actually split. And if you look, Westboro is, if we're talking about communities of interest, that is a large Filipino population. And if you were able just to finish that map, then all of South San Francisco would be as one. And so I'm asking that you please review the maps and consider the fact that over the years, we as a city have not been able to be as one whole district. And I think I understand you have to make tough decisions, but I think it's also imperative that you keep cities together as much as you can, but keep communities of interest together, especially in South San Francisco, where if you're going to draw and divide the Westboro area and draw that into 2 areas, now you're splitting 2 communities of interest. And I just want us to be a fair process, and I appreciate the work that you're doing. But please, as you look at this, consider the actions that you're doing in terms of the cities that have been split already. And I understand that there's concerns for splitting new cities because they haven't been split before, but I think we need to have a real conversation saying, are there new cities there that we have to split up? Ensure that other cities that have been split can now be together. So I appreciate, again, the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nogales. Next speaker is Antonio Lopez, followed by Eva Knott. Mr. Lopez, I'm going to give you the permission to talk, and you'll have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to listen to the concerns of the community. My name is Antonio Lopez, councilman for the city of East Palo Alto. Let's be really clear and mindful about what we're here. We're here to undo decades and even centuries of inequity, racial divide, discrimination, and it is at the behest of this commission to ensure that the future of this county remain progressive, remain racially united. And I'm concerned looking at some of these maps that cities like East Palo Alto and North Fair Oaks and East Menlo Park, cities that historically have ties, are divided. And so, you know, let me also iterate that I understand there's also the fact that we're gonna have to divide somewhere. So let me make the bold but sincere claim that if we're gonna do that, let's look at the wealthier areas of the well-to-do, because from an equity standpoint in 2021, we have to privilege the unprivileged, understanding that's what history has shown us, to give justice, to give voice, to give representation. I think it's time for allyship and solidarity to take place, and I can think of no better example and opportunity. If I'm hearing my brothers from San Francisco and San Bruno say we're being divided, let's look at those areas that have historically have benefited and flourished and give them the opportunity to support us in this once in a decade time. Thank you very much. I wish you all the best of luck. I ask that you not just have East Palo Alto at heart, our humble city, but North Fair Oaks, East Menlo Park, Bellhaven, and keeping South San Francisco and San Bruno together. You have an arduous task. I wish you all the best of luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Next speaker is Eva Knott, followed by Sue Henkin-Haas. Ms. Knott, I'm going to give you the permission to talk and you'll have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
Okay, my name is Terry Adams. I'm Ava Knott's husband. We share a computer, but I'm going to speak for us here. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and thank you to the commission for all your very difficult work on this. I notice that the commission is grappling with redistricting based on criteria have to do with population, distribution, and density, and on the integrity of cities. But I'm wondering, what about access to resources? For instance, the distribution of fire apparatus in the cities and in the unincorporated areas, access to law enforcement, distance to hospitals, clinics, schools. Yeah, and also could be average income, average property tax in different areas. Schools. So I wonder, was a choice made somewhere along the line to not address the idea of resources and put it strictly on the basis of individual counts of people? Or how will the commission ever address those issues? And I think it pertains to what Cindy Ergo was saying about our feeling a little bit out of the road out here on the coastline. So thank you very much. And thanks again to the commission for your hard work. This is very difficult.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sue Henkin-Haas, followed by our last speaker, Eddie Flores. Okay, Sue, I'm going to give you the permission to talk and you'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Sue Henkin-Haas, and I live in San Gregorio, which is an unincorporated coastside community. I support keeping all unincorporated areas of the San Mateo coast in a single supervisory district, and I support adding other unincorporated areas to our district. We are already by population a minority in the county. If you divide us up, we will be even a smaller minority, less able to represent ourselves. The unincorporated area covers almost 75% of the landmass of San Mateo County.
We are a unique community with very different needs than the incorporated communities. We have different exposures to climate change and are much more fire prone than the other side of the hill. Unincorporated areas already receive less services than incorporated areas. You can literally see the difference in services when you walk down Shelby Lane in North Fair Oaks, where one side of the street is unincorporated and the other side is incorporated. The incorporated side has sidewalks and curbs, and the unincorporated side does not. Unincorporated areas are disenfranchised, and dividing them will only reduce services even further. The most significant issue that unincorporated communities have in common is that the Board of Supervisors are the direct representatives to residents living in unincorporated San Mateo County. The Board of Supervisors is the main governing body that decides building codes, zoning rules, and creates mandates which apply only to unincorporated residents. If the unincorporated areas have no power to elect a supervisor, then they have no say. I support keeping all unincorporated areas of the San Mateo Coast in District 3, and I support adding other unincorporated areas to our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Our next speaker is Eddie Flores, followed by our last speaker, Pam Jones. And also at this point, I will make a final call for folks to raise their hand if they wish to speak on item number 6. Eddie, I'm going to give you the permission to talk. And sorry, once again, you can only speak once per item. So if you have raised your hand again, your name will not be called. Eddie Flores, please proceed.
Good evening, commissioners and chair. Thank you all specifically for your time devoted into this role that you all have been working on for a long time. I do understand that this is a very difficult but very important and intentional decisions that you guys will be making. I want to highlight that while we certainly want to maintain city integrity as much as possible, we also need to focus that an underlying priority needs to also be the possibility that people of color actually have an opportunity to be competitive in this county. The minimal change maps maintain the underlying racist implications of the current maps and continue to lock out communities of color in this majority minority county. Many of us have seen the data, in particularly to pandemic, and we often ask, what else can we do to those communities? EPA, North Fair Oaks, San Bruno, South San Francisco. Well, this is a time where we could really put that to work. We need to recognize that outside the influence, the outside influence of any community that is really grouped in wealthy, affluent cities. I don't have to list them for you. You all know which communities and cities I'm speaking about. Enough is enough. What is it that, why are we keeping that as a community of interest, and that constitutes itself as enough of a community interest to not even touch it? The only thing that binds them is their wealth, and these maps come at the expense of those without the wealth. I really ask you to think about that as you start choosing and voting and on recommending maps to the Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flores. I did make the final call a few minutes ago. The last speaker for item number 6 is going to be Pam Jones. Pam, I'm going to give you the permission to talk, and you'll have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
Good evening, and thank you, commissioners. My name is Pam Jones. I live in the Bellhaven neighborhood, which is a portion of the city of Menlo Park, but we are more like East Palo Alto and North Fair Oaks, which is why the original map was drawn the way it was. At any rate, we still need to be kept together. I do have concerns about the way Menlo Park is split, because it actually creates a district that has extremely wealthy people living there when you look at Atherton, Woodside being in that community. I also want to point out that on your website, the map that you have, that San Mateo County current district's official demographics, that it is actually a 2010 decennial census map, which can be very confusing when a person is trying to create their own maps. Again, I want to thank the commission, and I hope that we absolutely need to have more meetings. There's ample time. It's unfortunate that it will inconvenience some people other than the commission and the residents who have been asking for this. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, after I made the last final call, I do see another hand raised. Should we go ahead and take that comment?
Please proceed.
Sure. Remy Racing, you will be the last speaker. I'll give you the permission to talk and you'll have 2 minutes. Please proceed. Remy, please accept the unmute button on your screen and you can begin speaking. Okay, Mr. Chair, I don't see that he or she is unmute. So maybe if they raise their hand again, maybe we can call on that person again.
Okay.
Okay.
So if there's no further comments from the general public, I'll move to close the public hearing.
I do see Remy unmute.
Let's go.
Yes, Mr. Racing, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sir, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. Item number six.
Thank you very much. This is Charles Catania from Woodside. I'm on Remy's telephone. One of the kind of a disturbing revelation here is the fact that NDC had some maps that were presented to them, and they didn't do anything about it for this meeting, especially since we have little time here to do anything. And Mr. Silverman, who's obviously with the county, is getting in the way of connecting the commission with the Board of Supervisors, which I think the Board of Supervisors need to address this issue. So I think, Mr. Silverman, this is directed towards you. I think you should talk to the Board of Supervisors because this is an important process and they need to make a special meeting if it's needed. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chair, that was our last speaker.
Okay, then good. I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Roll call.
Yes.
Commissioner Vanderpolly,
Yes.
Commissioner Barber,
Yes.
thank you, Commissioner Betzo,
Yes.
Commissioner Chan,
Yes.
Commissioner Chow,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Dinan,
Yes.
perfect, thank you. Commissioner Espinoza,
Yes.
Commissioner Monzon Ruiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Albert,
Aye.
Commissioner Romero,
Yes.
thank you, Commissioner Salander,
Yes.
and Chair Lawrence.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes with Commissioner Guerrero being absent. Public hearing is now closed.
Okay. The next item on my agenda is 6D, an action to discuss and provide direction to the staff regarding additional maps or modification to existing maps. And I'll open it to the floor for suggestions and comments.
To the chair,
Commissioner Impali.
I would like to have access to the data where the, I mean, I already made that request earlier, but I would like to have it as soon as possible so that we can create, maps with the data, see how we can not split too many cities, but we can, listen to the public comments and maybe do that. To do that, I would like to have that. So I don't know when Christine can provide us that. That's one request. And yeah, and I would like to thank Justin Mates and his team for providing all the collateral to me to be able to present to the Burlingame Lions Club as well as the Commission Status of Women. Tremendous job. Thank you so much for your promptness and to my requests. Really appreciate it. And also Christine, thank you for all your help. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I realized I did not get a chance to respond to your question earlier. So just for the benefit of everyone, what I will commit to providing by the end of the day tomorrow will be that updated spreadsheet with not just the unincorporated and incorporated areas populations, but also what district. Those are broken down by district.
Yeah.
As well as all of the commissioner maps or any other maps that have been submitted since the previous meeting that we did not present tonight. So we will process those tomorrow. And I also wanted to say that I started looking at Commissioner Espinosa Murray's map, and it looked very similar to a map I was working on. That's exciting. So we will have more maps tomorrow. So you can review them over the weekend if that's your idea of fun. But thank you for your patience and understanding.
I appreciate it. And also, Christine, would you mind also when you, for example, San Bruno is split and then South San Francisco, could you please also add that? Because right now it's only as one, it's showing up as one row. Can you add another row and say so and add the district, either two or three? Yeah, that would be very helpful. Thank you so much. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Are there other comments, requests from the commissioners?
Chair Lawrence, I do see 2 hands raised.
Okay, I'll start with Commissioner Enzo.
Commissioner Azos, hi.
Sorry.
It's all good. I was noticing that the first bullet point under California law, where we're talking about ensuring geographic contiguity, I was wondering if this is probably a question for council here, but is that referring to the fact that you shouldn't split a district into 2 discontiguous pieces, or is that talking about a desire for compactness, that districts should be, that you shouldn't have a snaky district?
Those are 2 different criteria. And you are correct that the contiguity is about having a district that does not have any disconnected parts, right? To the extent practicable. That's the first criteria. Compactness is the 4th criteria there. So they are 2 separate criteria. And contiguity is far more important, right? And for anyone wondering what that is, some of our cities aren't even contiguous, right? Redwood City and Redwood Shores is not actually contiguous, but our districts should be contiguous to the extent practicable.
Great, thank you. I was wondering basically whether we could cut the Gordian knot by if districts are supposed to be compact, and if that was higher than cities, that feels like it would solve a bunch of our problems, because then we could say, throw that out. It should be compact rather than contiguous. Okay, but thank you for the clarity.
Chair recognize Commissioner Obert.
Thank you, Chair Lawrence. I actually have, in the interest of trying to, if nothing else, spark some discussion along the lines of what I had brought up earlier. I have a proposal that I'd like to submit for some goals for a map. Is it possible, given our Zoom setup, for me to be able to share my screen so that everybody can see it simultaneously, or do I just need to read it?
Commissioner, you are able to share it since you are a panelist.
So Suki, I just press share screen. Is that how I started?
Yes, share screen and then select the window you want to share or the document you want to share.
Okay, let me fire up the document first. And then come back over here and see if I can share screen. Let's see. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, good. And again, this is, if nothing else, just to spark some discussion, just some ideas I had based on listening to all the input tonight and from the earlier nights on some goals for a map. So it's not a map itself, but it's directions we could potentially give to Kristen to come up with a map. The first is keep the coast together. And the reason for that in my mind, and I think from what I've heard from many people, it's pretty distinct in multiple ways from the bay side of the county. And so it sort of is a unit of its own in many ways. Second concept, second goal is keep as much of the unincorporated area together in one district as you can and consolidate it with the coast to the extent you can do that, to the extent that that's feasible. And my logic behind that is that a point that's been made by a number of speakers on at our various meetings. Both of those sections of the county typically have a lot of their population where the board is their local government. It's not, you know, they don't have their own city council. Obviously, places like Half Moon Bay and Pacifica do, but large areas of that territory do not. And so they share a common interest that way. And then, as we've talked about, I have it as if splitting cities is necessary to balance population. I suspect it is. You're going to have to do that somehow. My rule of thumb that I would propose is that we split the largest cities first. And here's my thinking, which again, this is to spark discussion. But before I get into the logic behind it, don't split communities of interest. I think that's really important. And to an extent, larger cities probably have a greater likelihood of having communities of interest that are geographically consolidated so that you could draw lines that split a city but keep the communities of interest together. But the main reason for doing that, in my mind, is when you think about the ability of the population to express itself politically and make sure its will gets heard, I think that on balance, larger cities inherently have more political power at the Board of Supervisors level, even if you split them between districts, than smaller cities, because any city has some degree of community cohesion by virtue of the fact that it's a single city. So that, you know, if half of San Carlos is in District 1 and half of it is in District 2, I'm using that as an example because that's where I live. San Carlos is actually a tiny city. You'd still have sort of one San Carlos voice. It happened to go through two supervisors, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing from their point of view because it takes three supervisors to decide to do something. And if two of them are listening to the people with a common interest, then maybe those interests get heard more readily. So that's the concept that I have on proposed goals for a map. And I toss it out there to see if anybody else thinks this is worth tasking NDC with looking into, or maybe it sparks some thoughts that other people have on similar kinds of related goals that we could give staff direction on what we'd like to see brought back. Any other, I guess I'll turn this off and stop sharing the map. If anybody wants me to put it back up, I can. Thank you.
Mr. Rose, I think those are certainly worth consideration. I would like to add a fourth and to have Ms. Parks take a look and see, can we not divide cities again? So if cities are divided before, can we draw a map where we don't divide those cities? Just from an equity standpoint, you know, I'd like to see that. And our chair will recognize Commissioner Chow. She had her hand raised.
Thank you, Chair Lawrence. I was waiting for Kristen to show us the maps where we save them in District R. Is she going to be approaching that? Is she going to share it? And also, I have a question about the smcdistrictsline.org. There's a sections where you can see draft map. And one of the sections, a focus map, adopted maps, and map submitter. Those keep saying coming soon. When is that coming soon going to be? We're going to be toward the last meeting already. Is that the map's going to be? Is that the map that we are drawing? Mm-hmm.
The adopted map will be posted on this website and keep after the Board of Supervisors approves it. by that December 15th deadline. So just a reminder that this website does have to stay up for 10 years. So that's why there's a space there for the adopted map, so that all of the history of this can be transparent until the next redistricting process. But let me share my screen so that I can show you where you submit on District R. And I just want to point out that there is that PDF that you can print out too, with the instructions on how to use it.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. And what about focus map?
So focus maps would be if the commission what it recommends. I would say that's probably a place we would put maps that are recommended to the board, or you know, that I would think of as focus maps.
I see. Okay, thank you for explaining it.
Yeah, no problem. So on District R here, after you draw, of course, a different color for each district that you draw, you're just going to click the save button and it will automatically save. All right. And when you click save, you can also click share now so that it's publicly available to everyone rather than just shared just on the back end. When it's just saved on the back end, we have to wait for the vendor to give us access to it. So definitely once you click save, then click share.
And also put a name, right? Team
you
or
can. Yeah, you can. And it doesn't have to be your name. It can be the name of what the goal of your map is, right? Like no division of cities or keep the coast together, right? Anything like that.
Right. So I did that. So where do I find my map?
So if you did that, then your maps will be on this front page here in the public gallery. So someone submitted a map tonight.
I see that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that now.
And there was another map, community of interest map submitted tonight as well. Yeah. So these are all the maps that have been shared on here, and I just want to thank everyone that has submitted.
Yep, I do see my map. Thank you, Kristen. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Espinosa. You're muted.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the time. I just want to go back to Commissioner Olbert's presentation because I didn't want us to move on without having a discussion. I would say that I agree with most of the points, and including your addition, Chair Lawrence. I do, however, think that there's one that I would subtract, which is limiting it to starting off with the larger cities. That means that we are basically talking about Daly City and San Mateo. And I do not want to go in there knowing that that's exactly what we're going to go hack. I think that we should leave that part open for us to really think about how some of the creative ways in which we can split a specific geography if necessary. And I would love to hear from NDC with their recommendations in the maps before we make that determination that it's by the size of the city. But aside from that, I do agree with all of Commissioner Olbert's recommendations. So thank you, Commissioner Olbert, for doing that. I think you laid out like 90% of things that I had in my head. So I'm glad that you laid them out. And thank you, Chair Lawrence, for adding that additional variable.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Commissioner Bledsoe.
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, thank you to Commissioner Olbert for that thoughtful presentation. It was certainly well received. In terms of the public comment and some of the comments that have been made here about keeping the unincorporated areas together in one unit, I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't say off the top of my head which those districts are. In addition to the unincorporated coast, there's Emerald Hills, which is adjacent to Redwood City, but contiguous to the coast. There's North Fair Oaks, which, as the speaker tonight suggested, is right up against Redwood City. May or may not have a community of interest with the coast. Certainly they share some similarities. May or may not have a community of interest with Redwood City. But there's also, and another speaker spoke to the point of economic community of interest and representation based on that, and having more of an alliance with East Palo Alto and East Menlo. But there also, there's this teeny tiny island of unincorporation in Daly City called Broadmoor. And that's definitely not contiguous with the rest of the unincorporated areas. So in considering that concept, I did want to put that forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Bledsoe. Any other comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Azon raised his hand.
Yeah, thank you. So specifically, speaking to Commissioner Bledsoe's comments, can we put together a map that draws together those unincorporated counties? Perhaps that will be splitting Daly City in order to incorporate Broadmoor. North Fair Oaks is already adjacent to what would be District 3 under the minimal change map. And Emerald Hill also looks like it would be adjacent. So if that gets you enough population, it may be able to, you may be able to do something else there. But if we put together a map that that is intentionally designed to get unincorporated areas together.
Thank you. Commissioner Over.
Thank you, Chair Lawrence. I appreciated the comments of my colleagues on that little idea I put up. And I think Commissioner Bledsoe's comments in particular about, she referred to them as islands. That's why I was describing including the unincorporated areas where feasible with the coast, because you know, for example, there are a number of islands in San Carlos that are actually disconnected from each other that are not part of San Carlos. And it clearly would make no sense, or arguably would make no sense, to incorporate them in a coastside district because their interests are far more aligned with being embedded inside of San Carlos than they are with, because they're not even connected to it. So that's what I meant by that caveat of if feasible. So I'm interested to see what NDC will come back with. So thank you.
There's no more comments from the commission. I will ask Ms. Parks, do you have clear direction or any comments that you need to draw out from the commissioners regarding what we're asking for?
Yeah, actually, I would ask Ms. Parks, you know, if the commission is at the end of its discussion, kind of similar to last time, if you could summarize the specific direction you understand that you've been given, as well as the specific maps that you will go ahead and draw for the commission's consideration, so that everyone can be on the same page at the end of this meeting.
And Mr. Mates, sorry, through the chair, Chair Lawrence, it looks like Commissioner Romero, she maybe was perhaps maybe had to reconnect, and it looks like she has her hand raised as an attendee. So to make sure that she's recognized. Mr. Clerk.
Okay.
Sure. Let me move her over now.
Yeah. Thank you. I didn't see her. Yeah.
Me neither. Commissioner Romero, since you're joining by panelists, do you have something to say?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Council Brian, for like watching that. I was like having a hard time. Sorry, I'm having a lot of Wi-Fi issues. So I had a couple questions. One is I wanted to clarify if there was a suggestion to split Daly City. Did I mishear that? And then the second question was, I've heard from a few of the community members who live in unincorporated Broadmoor area that the few folks that I've been in communication with have not expressed interest to be part of the Daly City District 5 area. So I think I wanted to just put that out on record But wanted to get clarification on that question. If there was a suggestion to split Daly City, because that would be extremely, yeah, that is not something that our that District 5 is at all in favor of. And I think we've heard over a lot of the public, well, throughout meetings, we've heard from different community members that that's not the direction, that they definitely want to keep Daly City whole. I also had a question about the NDC City Focus Map, and hoping Kristen can answer. I noticed that on the side, there's comments that discuss sort of like the breakdown of the population. And I was wondering if that information, if that was created by whoever created the map, or is that accurate? Like, do we have a sense of the accuracy of those, the commentary that's on the side for the NDC City Focus Map?
Are you looking at District R, or are you looking at the review map or the PDF? Because the PDF is from NDC. I do believe that there are some maps on District R that have the same name as the NDC maps, but were not created by NDC, which I know is very confusing. But if you are looking at the PDFs, those demographic reports in the table where it's broken down by each district, those are accurate and produced by NDC.
Okay.
Does that answer the question?
Yes. Yes.
Sorry. So it's my impression that looking at the draft maps, that links you out to Dropbox, and that's just a general public comment. Like,
oh, got
when you
it.
upload
Okay.
a file to Dropbox, anyone can add a comment to the side of it.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Oh, there's comments on those. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the comments. Okay, so the comments are from the general public, and that's what I was curious if those were accurate, if anybody had vetted them. Because it could be a little bit misleading if you're just sort of looking at them and you don't have all the information. Okay, so I think I missed the presentation where Chair Olbert suggested to split the large cities. I'd really push back on that, especially Daly City. Just for the record, I think there is a strong interest to and I feel to keep part of South San Francisco, the old town. And I regret not sending Ms. Parks information, the exact location. I know I was supposed to do that, sent the exact location of what old South San Francisco was. So we will regroup and send you that information through Justin. So thank you. That's it.
Commissioner Chow, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Chair Lawrence. I want to echo what Commissioner Romero was saying, to keep Daly City in one district, because I have one person who tried to call in last meeting, and he was not able to. And he said he submitted in the public comments, and I haven't looked through all the comments. He's been with Daly City for 36 years, and he is very adamant to keep Daly City in one district. Thank you. That's why I want to share that.
Okay, if there's no further comments from the commissioners, we're going to assume that Ms. Parks, were you going to summarize as you understand what the direction is?
Yeah, so what I hear consensus around is a map that does not divide Menlo Park, South San Francisco, Belmont, and San Bruno, because those are the cities that are currently divided under the current district map and the NDC Minimal Change Map. I do not hear consensus around a map that is dividing the larger cities first, but I'm happy to draw it just for consideration. Just as a comparison point, I will say, to comply with the Fair Maps Act, it should be noted that, communities of interest are prioritized above cities. So to the extent that we're preserving a community of interest as a reason to divide a city, that is something that is legally permissible. So keeping that rank order in mind going forward. I also will be processing the maps from the two commissioners. Beyond that, I have not heard any other direction. So please let me know if there is more.
Through the chair, I would like to say that Burlingame city should not be split at this time, because I got a lot of feedback during my presentation. So if possible, can we not, when you draw the maps, let's try and see if that's possible. I mean, I see Commissioner Albert comment on bigger cities, having to split. I think it's from a fiscal standpoint, right? They have the more political power they have. So, but I would like to see that part. How does it look like? I mean, we should not split any city if given a choice, right? But I would like to see, if we would rather split one or two possible rather than many. And then going from that, right? What from a fiscal perspective, right? From a financial standpoint, what makes sense? So smaller cities should not be split. That doesn't make any sense. So that's my input. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair will recognize Commissioner Olbert, then Commissioner Salazar, and then Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Chair Lawrence. I just wanted to make the observation that while we haven't heard from community members in every city in San Mateo County, quite honestly, guys, I would be shocked if you couldn't find people in every one of the cities who would stand there and say, don't split my city. Okay. Right. I make this next statement just out of sort of formal logic. Therefore, if everybody says it, then it's not a differentiating factor, because you can't use it to decide stuff, right? Because nobody wants to do it. So I like the idea. I have not been able to create a map that doesn't require splitting a city. If somebody can figure out how to do that, I'm all for reviewing that. I would really love to see that. But I'm not trying to push the particular idea that I presented, but I think in practice, one way or another, we're going to have to come up with some methodology that at least is a starting point, and sort of fill in the details in the end, but some methodology to guide staff on how we would like things split when they must be split. So if anybody has any other thoughts or concerns on that, I think now would be the time to put them out there, because the next meeting is going to be too late. Thanks.
Thank you.
Chair Lawrence, I just want to mention that we do have one hand raised in the public. Members of the public, public hearing is closed, so we will not be taking any additional public comments. So just letting you know. Go ahead, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Commissioner Salazar.
Thank you. Yeah, so as a representative of District 2 and a resident of San Mateo City, which is quite large, well, both of those, the city and the district are quite populous. I do want to just encourage any members of the public who are watching this meeting now, or if you review it later, to really, residents of San Mateo, tell us where your communities of interest are. I know I've been trying to reach out to as many people as possible, but if we do, pragmatically speaking, have to split a city like San Mateo, I'd really like to make sure that no communities of interest are split there when looking at things like renters versus homeowners and all of that. I'll try to do some research in the demographics myself and get them to you, Kristen, as soon as possible. I really don't want to overburden you or your team, because I understand that your colleagues are definitely going through a lot, and I want to be respectful of that. But yeah, just as a representative of District 2, I'm going to keep working to make sure that if we do have to do something like split San Mateo, it doesn't split any other communities of interest.
Thank you.
Chair Lawrence, if I could just have one public service message.
Sure.
As the clerk said, the public hearing is over, but if there are members of the public who would still like to submit comments, you can do so by emailing districtlines@smcgov.us. It is not too late to provide public input into this process. It's just that the public hearing for tonight is closed. So that email address is districtlines@smcgov.org. And it's on the website, smcdistrictlines.org. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Kristen, I just wanted to make sure when you were stating the things that had been requested, I think there was also a large amount of community input on the coastal district. So as you were mentioning the things that shouldn't be split, I just wanted to add to that. The coastal district is not my district, but I did recognize that there was a lot of public comment on that.
Thank you. And to clarify, some of the public comment we heard tonight said, do not split the coastal areas south of Pacifica. And then, you know, NDC did present at the previous meeting a coast map that drew the coastal areas into a district with some of Daly City and Broadmoor. I think what we heard at the previous meeting was that Daly City didn't want to be divided in that way. So it could be helpful if the commissioners would direct NDC to revise the coastal map to maybe not include Daly City, or to not split it, right? Or to create other options for a coastal district, understanding that alone the coastal areas and the unincorporated areas that are adjacent to the coastal communities are not enough population alone.
I also just had one more comment. As I'm just listening to people about, you know, San Mateo and Daly City and the bigger, more populous areas versus North Fair Oaks or Belmont. And it seems to me, and maybe this is just a statement of the obvious, that a more populous community with a somewhat split does it minimize that voice of that community? Whereas if you split something like Belmont in half, it takes the small voice and makes it completely nullifies it in my estimation. If I'm incorrect, I would welcome the correction on that. But and again, not necessarily specifically targeting the bigger cities, but for instance, Redwood City is quite diverse, and there are almost lines even within Redwood City that have distinctly different populations. And it's a place where I think I noticed in one of the maps that, you know, San Carlos and then a little piece of Redwood City, and then down was also I think Menlo Park. And it seems to me that upper line, that piece of Redwood City that goes along with San Carlos and Menlo Park, could actually almost be extended to almost El Camino, in terms of if we need to take a piece of a bigger city, a bigger population, I would say based on kind of who's in that community. And I think that I've been here for 16 years, and I kind of know the general feel of each community and who's there, and can we take that into consideration? It feels like, you know, we're aiming at numbers. Oh, it's got to be the right numbers. Well, maybe some of those numbers could be manipulated a little bit, because we also know the communities who are living within that, within those boundaries. And I just think that there's instead of kind of putting a stick in the ground and saying, don't dissect my community, don't dissect my city. Let's take a more pragmatic look at this and say, well, no, look, I mean, these actually fit together demographically, and it would be okay to take a piece of that because it naturally fits. And so I think I just want to back up from, and I felt going into this, you know, a little defensiveness for the Belmont community, not even my district, but a place where, you know, where I spend a lot of time, that, yeah, taking a small community and breaking that voice apart just feels like it does a disservice to that community. So thank you, Chair, for the time. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you. Commissioner Chan.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple more comments on the issue of the the city splitting specifically. So I hear what Commissioner Olbert is saying in terms of, you know, probably every city will have commenters who don't want their city to be split. However, I do think it's worth keeping in mind sort of the historical experiences of certain cities that seem to time and again have been split, whereas other cities have been kept together. So that's something that maybe we should think about, and that's why I'm supportive of the idea of having an alternative map that tries its best to not split the cities that are already split today. I also wanted to highlight too the idea of communities of interest in North County and South County. So I was just looking at comparing, for example, the minimal change map that keeps Daly City together versus the coast map that currently splits it. So in the minimal change map, what we have is in District 5, there is a majority Asian American Pacific Islander voting population, and we've heard repeatedly from public commenters, not just from Daly City, but also from South San Francisco, how diverse and how many Asian American and how large the AAPI population is in North County. And in the coast map that splits Daly City into two, suddenly that percentage drops below 50% in both cases. So now we've split the AAPI community of interest in two, and therefore decrease the likelihood that an AAPI community member may be elected to the Board of Supervisors, which isn't true today, despite the fact that that district is, at least according to these demographics, is a majority AAPI. So we should pay attention to the diversity of North County and South County when we think about how these lines are drawn. And, you know, it so happens that that does align with some of the bigger cities in the county. So I do think we have to be sensitive to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chan. Commissioner Over raised his hand. You're on mute, Commissioner
Yes,
Over.
I think after all this time, I would learn to unmute myself, but no, apparently not. Thank you, Commissioner Lawrence. I just wanted to, because I was something that Commissioner Davis said, the way she put it actually really resonated with me. And I didn't explain my idea really well, so I appreciate the fact that she enlarged upon it and corrected it. The idea I had about looking at largest cities first is really exactly what she was talking about, is that, as I understood it, that larger cities are more likely to have distinct communities of interest within them, and to some extent communities of interest which may span that city boundary, that there may be, you know, part that's in Daly City and part that's in South San Francisco. And again, only if we have to split something, that would be arguably a less bad way of splitting it. And in fact, I think, as Brian pointed out, technically or by law, the priority for community of interest, as I understand it, is actually higher than that of cities. Okay, so it sort of resonates with that too. And I don't know exactly where the lines get drawn, but that's kind of why I was saying, well, maybe we ought to look there first, because if we can do it that way, it might be the least bad thing we could do. So anyway, thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Davis. I appreciate you clarifying it.
Thank you, Commissioner Over. Are there any further comments?
To the chair, I have one comment to Kristen. Kristen, to that spreadsheet, if possible at all, can we add the ethnicity? If that information is provided, can we please add that to the list too, please?
By city?
Ethnicity. You
Yeah,
know,
but
like if
by
possible at
district.
all, by district.
By district.
That's,
You know,
that
by
already,
city. If you know, like, you know, in this city, if you look at the communities of interest, you could say, you know, for example, you know, the city has
so
this
what
person more.
what I would suggest is
Mhm.
looking at the interactive review map, so you
Okay.
can see that on a map.
Sure. That's fine.
Yeah,
That's fine.
rather than summarized at the city level, because we want to see more of the community than that. Yeah.
Right. No, I'm just want to run a macro and see how we can, looking at the data, see what the possibilities are. And then taking that community of interest into consideration when we run the analysis is what I was trying to think about. That's what I was asking. But if that's not easy, that's okay. I understand. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no further hands raised, then item 6D, do I need a motion to close?
Motion. We already closed the public hearing.
Okay.
Chair Lawrence, if I could, that was a really great sort of additional robust discussion we had, and I just want to check with Ms. Parks on whether or not she has any additions or revisions to that list of the directions that she understands that she's been given tonight by the commission on what to report back to you all.
Yeah, so right now I have a list of 3 goals or 3 different maps, right? Obviously the one that doesn't divide the currently divided cities. And then another option or a revision to the NDC coast map that doesn't divide Daly City. And then I guess I'm not, that third one is not, it's sort of an interesting, in my mind, evolution of the original proposal from Commissioner Olbert to divide the larger cities first. And it's sort of evolved into paying attention to communities of interest, paying attention to the voting power of Asian American, Latino voters, and still minimizing divisions of cities, but being mindful that if larger cities are going to be divided, they're divided in such a way that the division follows and preserves communities of interest.
Right.
I'm not sure that makes sense, but so this would be a map, that third one would be a map that divides larger cities along community of interest boundaries while being mindful of Voting Rights Act considerations. Is that?
I think that's fair.
All right.
And just for the record, for clarification too, Kristen, we've heard testimony about communities of interest. It's also we've received surveys and everything like that. NDC reviews all of that to understand what the communities of interest are in San Mateo County when, for example, you're going to put together that map that you just described as your third map, correct?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. That was good. Item 7, commission member reports. Seeing no hands, I assume there are none. We'll move on to item 8, future agenda items. Well, I raised one earlier, but I'll let Commissioner Azone go first.
Yeah, thank you. There's been some discussion about adding an extra meeting, which I know that at the October 7th meeting, we made a decision to add additional meetings, which we did via an agenda item about discussing next hearing dates. I am curious about whether we are able to add an extra meeting, given that we don't have kind of something agendized that looks like talking about future meetings.
Ryan, you want to address that, or?
Yeah, I think David was kind of given some direction. I think we got to kind of, deal with that issue first. One, just kind of for the commission's consideration. One constraint we have is, in addition to the board hearing in the first instance the draft maps on November 9th, before the board can actually adopt the map, that map has to be published for a minimum of 7 days before it's adopted by the board. So the draft maps that are recommended to the board would have to be recommended by November 2nd to give the board sufficient time before it can actually adopt one of those maps. So that kind of adds an additional constraint to the potential hearing dates. And of course, we have a day, I think our hearing that's on calendar is on the 28th. So that's a Thursday. So then we have, the weekend, and then we have November 1st. And so I think we have some work to do. David needs to kind of, I think, have that conversation before we can finalize that item.
Okay, thank you. The chair recognizes Commissioner Chan.
Yeah, I liked the idea that you put forward, Chair Lawrence, to have a postmortem of the process. I think it would be great if we could have that meeting after we submitted the map, so we don't add it to what's probably going to be a really long agenda for another meeting. But once we've dealt with the high stakes stuff, we can sort of have the time to mull over and suggest improvements to the process after that decision gets made. That would be my suggestion for agendas for future meetings.
Well spoken. Commissioner Chow.
Thank you, Chair Lawrence. I want to see for next Thursday, that's going to be the last meeting that we're going to vote for the maps, right? Is there a cutoff date that Kristen is going to post the map on the website so we can have the chance to review and decide and make proposals which one we're going to vote for at the next meeting? I lost you, huh?
No, I hear you. Kristen, would the maps be ready and posted prior to the next meeting, which is on the 28th?
Yes. Why don't we say by Tuesday morning at 9 a.m.
Okay.
Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. Okay.
And then I just also wanted to clarify that prior to adoption, the maps will only need to be posted for 3 days because we will be within 28 days of the deadline. Okay. So that 7 day requirement shrinks down to 3 days.
But not on November 9th.
Not on the 9th.
Correct.
Yeah.
Commissioner Dinan.
Yeah, hi. I guess I'm a little bit surprised by the meeting today. I was given our deadline. I was kind of expecting we'd be going through maps and discussing them and eliminating some and actually making real progress towards getting some actionable recommendations for San Mateo County. I hope that the next meeting there's a lot less discussion of process and aspirational goals of what we're doing. We've already talked about this. People are all on the same page, and it would be great to actually see some concrete action. Have a NCAA style elimination tournament where we go from, I don't know, 10 maps to 5 maps to 3 maps, and then we get the top 2. What I see is a lot of talking, a lot of really, I mean, what has been accomplished tonight? Nothing's been accomplished. You've talked about not splitting cities. We talked about that last time. We've talked about the various goals. What we need to do is actually look at maps, look at the communities, make some decisions, make some recommendations, and close this process out. Their time is ticking. The way that we can address these issues are by concretely looking at maps and starting the process. I'm actually kind of surprised we didn't do that tonight. If I had a deadline for November 9th, that's exactly where we'd be right now. And maybe we'd go back and think about it and have the final 4 maps that we have to determine and think about it, get some feedback, tweak it a little bit and go forward with it. But endless meetings are not going to resolve these issues, and talking about it won't resolve it. We need to have some real action, and I hope we can do that next meeting. I wish we had gotten farther down the road on this one.
Thank you, Commissioner Dinan. Commissioner Espinoza.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioner Dinan. I appreciate your comments. I did feel a little bit like that. It was under the expectation that we'd be reviewing maps and actually making decisions. And then the 28th would be to finalize what our recommendation was. Given that we do have that 7-day requirement before the next meeting on November 9th, is a meeting on November 1st an option for us to set up as a commission, since we have enough time, similar as we did our last meeting, we made a motion to have a meeting. That would be my preference, based on the fact that we should have had more of a working meeting. This meeting we weren't able to do. We had extended that for an additional day on the 28th. And now we're basically down to one day as we were initially, because today was more of us just, as Commissioner Diamond pointed out, just kind of talking about some of the things we already talked about. So if the commission, my fellow commissioners are in agreement or would like to discuss it, I would entertain a motion for us to have a meeting on Monday, November 1st, so that we can take the 28th to really discuss some of our and choose some of our top maps, and leave for November 1st the day to decide on what maps we would submit to the board.
I second that.
Or map. Oh,
I second that.
All right.
It's that big an emotion. Dude, I'll second that.
So I guess I would make a motion, Mr. Chair, I move that we add an additional meeting for November 1st on Monday, so that we actually have 2 full working days for this commission as we had planned at our last meeting.
I second that.
Council, since this is not an action item, can this be done?
Yeah, this was, I think, discussed a bit before. This hasn't been agendized. One thing, Commissioner Espinoza, we did look at potentially November 1st. We do need to confirm a few items before we actually can kind of mark that on the calendar and even make it a possibility. And hopefully we can do that by tomorrow. And we may be able to reach out through Chair Lawrence to potentially agendize that for the next meeting.
I do have a question there for you, Deputy Counsel. In the last meeting, we made the same steps, right? And we added October 28th as an additional meeting. So what is the difference between the last motion that we made and passed and added an additional meeting day versus today us making that same recommendation?
There was a specific agenda item at the last meeting for future meetings, additional meetings,
okay.
And that item is not agendized this time around.
Okay.
That's the distinction.
Commissioner Olberg.
Thank you, Chair Lawrence. So before I make my observation, just a quick question, that last exchange. So we are not going to be voting on having an additional meeting tonight. Is my understanding correct? Is that what Brian's?
That is correct.
Okay. Then I guess perhaps what we ought to do is make sure that there's such an item to consider on our next meeting agenda in case we can't get to the end of what we need to do and we wish to get ourselves more time. Personally, I feel we're at the point now where we don't. Actually, not giving ourselves more time would probably help getting to a decision faster. Okay.
Yes.
Because people will go, we have to come to a decision. But tonight we face some fairly unique circumstances with the problems that NDC had and not having maps available to look at, and that's highly unfortunate. And I really wish it hadn't happened. But that's life, and we just have to roll with it and go with it. But we maybe want to put that item on our next agenda just so we have, in case things really come apart and we need the extra time, that we won't be stuck procedurally bound to not have another meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Lawrence?
Yes.
So at this point, we do have a motion on the floor. So Council, I think it would be correct if Commissioner Espinoza withdraws his motion, correct?
Technically, I can't withdraw because it was seconded, so there is a motion on the floor. We would have to vote it out. Sorry, I'm a nerd on parliamentary procedure. I know we don't go, but just say that there is a main motion on the floor, and it's no longer mine. It is now the body's.
How do we treat this since it wasn't agendized?
So I think.
Yeah. Go ahead, Suki.
Go ahead.
No, it wasn't a valid motion because the matter wasn't agendized. It couldn't have possibly been made. So I think we'll deem it as an invalid motion at this point.
Okay. Commissioner Davis.
I assume it's a no blood, no foul kind of a situation there with that. So
yes.
Okay. Also, I just wanted to clarify meeting that would be requested for November 1st be a commissioners only meeting. And no disrespect to the public, I think that we just need the chance to kind of distill our thoughts. I think we've received the input that we needed. Is that clear?
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be, it's a Brown Act body, so the meeting would have to be a public meeting where the public has an opportunity to make comment.
Thanks. I just needed that clarification. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Mates.
Thank you, Chair Lawrence. I want to appreciate and recognize the frustration that the commission has expressed today, and definitely share some disappointment that we were not able to provide more for you all to advance your discussions a little bit further than you have tonight, although I do think there has been a robust discussion and some pretty express direction given to the demographer who will prepare those maps and come back to you with them for your consideration. I understand that we are surrounded by rocks and hard places, and there's no good really choices on this timeline. I did want to be sensitive to and identify that November 1st is All Saints Day and November 2nd is Dia de los Muertos, and we have received some, concern from our community about generally scheduling things on those days. Again, rocks, hard places, I understand it, but I did want to raise that for the commission's consideration and appreciation as well. And this is just a very tight time frame, but I just want to get those 2 points out there. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Commissioner Vice Chair Romero's hand raised. I don't see it on my screen at the moment.
Oh, thank you, Chair Lauren. So yeah, I just wanted to bring up 2 quick points. I echo the importance of All Saints Day and Dia de los Muertos. And I also agree with one of the commissioners who said, if we're adding more meetings, we're just kind of dragging the inevitable. So I think at some point we just have to sort of just bite the bullet and just look at the maps and make a decision. I think, I think those of us who still feel the need to reach out to our community, continue to do that. So there are maps that are inclusive of the voices that are not being represented, especially our communities of color. I think that's critical. My understanding that the 1028 meeting was an added meeting. I recall that because I was the one who had requested an additional meeting last time. And so I understood 1021 being our last meeting, and then we added 1028. So I may be mistaken, but I do think it's really critical that we just move away from our aspirational goals and start looking concretely at maps. And also if there are maps that need to be that are still there's still a request to draw up, to send that information to Justin so he can relay that information to Kristen. Thank you, Chair Lawrence.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'll recognize Commissioner Netapalo.
Thank you, the Chair. So last time when we added that extra meeting is because in case if you're not able to make the decision on the 21st, then it's a fallback option to have October 28th as our final meeting. The assumption was we would create the draft today and we would finalize it on 28th to present. But unfortunately, that didn't happen this time. And given that, what we have given to Christine and she has to do all of that, I recommend that we add one additional meeting, either it's 1st or the 2nd, November 1st or 2nd, but having that as a fallback option would be a good idea. Yes, I understand more meetings doesn't make sense, but just having a 6-hour meeting or 4-hour meeting would not really help us. We need to even it has to be agendized. That's why I'm recommending that just have it on the agenda, that in case there may be an extension. And also I would like to request David to give us an update with his discussion with the Board of Supervisors. See, would they be willing to push the date or have a special meeting with our commission so that we can share our perspective. And I would like to just thought about another action. I don't know how the commission feels that maybe have a map where we have 6 districts, not 5. How does it going to look like? Can we have 6? Just as a suggestion, can we suggest that even? I don't know if we can.
I'm sorry.
Not sure.
I don't mean to shut down conversation, but I think we are getting a little bit beyond the agenda item that we're on, which is future agenda items. I will respond briefly. I cannot speak to the entire Board of Supervisors because that would be a Brown Act violation. I can certainly raise the issue that you have raised with the two members of the board who were previously a committee of the board when it was the time to form this commission. That's really all that I can do. But as I've said before, we had some pretty clear direction as the timeline on multiple occasions, and we cannot add districts. That is not something that we can legally do.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, request that whatever the update is, maybe we could hear at that time when you discuss with them. Just share with us during the meeting next time. I appreciate
Thank you. Chair recognizes Commissioner Espinosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to bring this whole conversation to a close and asking the commission for us to have the option if it is possible. I know Chief Deputy Counsel is going to check and see if the additional meeting is possible. I think it is important for us to give ourselves that option if necessary. It should be the emergency use only. If we find ourselves, meeting 6 to 8 hours and thinking we need to come back to this, and we have an option. Also thinking about the communities, I know that there are communities of interest that are meeting about what we're discussing and the maps that we present, and they set up meetings as communities. So that is also important to take into account. It isn't just single folks hopping on here giving comments. A lot of folks I know from the different communities across the county are setting up meetings and they're discussing what they want to push for. So we need to give them time to also think about and consider what we're presenting and what we're being given. So by us, saying, we should just get through this and get it done. Yes, but not so much. We got to give folks, by I say folks, the community, some time to process and give us their recommendations based on maps that we're seeing. So I just want to make sure that the commissioners understand that is happening on the outside and that we take that into account when deciding if we add an additional meet or not, or if it is necessary. I am one that doesn't want to sit in a meeting for 8 hours. I also want us to get through this process quickly, but I also want to respect everyone out there. It has these consequences impact them greatly. That is our role. It's not fun, but hopefully it is beautiful with the outcome that we have when we submit it to our supervisors. So that being said, I hope that we can move on and close and adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Espinosa. I'd also like to add for future agenda item, as I indicated earlier, that we do a postmortem, and I'd like to agendize that for the next meeting, assuming that we may not have that November 1 meeting.
Through the chair.
Please.
I don't know what other people's appetite would be. Personally, I like the idea of postmortem. I always love postmortems. I would rather do that at a separate meeting after the dust is settled, then we get back together again in mid-November and do that, assuming that our charter lasts that long. I would rather have the next meeting focused on nothing except coming up with a map recommendation.
I think it's a brilliant idea. I'll ask the county council, are we disbanded after that meeting, that last meeting, or what's the process?
Good question. We'll double check, but the charge was to recommend draft maps to the board. It doesn't say you can't meet afterwards and put together a postmortem as you're discussing, but the clear charge as set forth in the reso that establishes the commission is for you to recommend draft maps. An argument could be made, perhaps, that the postmortem is part of that process, but I'll have to double check the board materials just to make sure, unless my esteemed counsel and colleague, Mr. Silverman, has different thoughts.
I don't know that I have different thoughts. I mean, ultimately it depends on what the commission is trying to achieve. there's a certain irony here, which is that if your jurisdiction ends when you recommend a map, well, then you're not a Brown Act body anymore, and you can all meet as many times as you want. Outside of a public meeting, you can invite the public, you can invite us, you don't have to. I mean, there's absolutely nothing that would prohibit you whatsoever from having a postmortem after the last meeting. The only question is whether you want it to be an official public meeting and you want us involved. And, you know, I'm sure we can work it out.
Yeah, my thoughts are the reason I want it to be a public meeting because obviously I think in a postmortem, we're looking at ways to improve the process. And I believe that we want to share that with the board who will be nominating and approving people going forward. So unless we can officially submit that information to them, you know, it doesn't have the strength.
I hear you. I hear you. And I, you know, that's a very legitimate, I mean, I will note the next time this happens, none of the current board members will be on the board. But that is a fair comment.
Through the chair.
Yes.
I'm sure there are plenty of other people on this call who could do this, but I would be happy to offer my Zoom account to hold another meeting if that's what we need to do. Because I do think the postmortem would be useful.
Yes.
Anyway.
Okay. Mr. Mates, you had your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. And I'm definitely hearing the interest in reporting out beyond just a recommended map. My one concern as staff is if you have a meeting in November while the board is considering maps, it could potentially be a bit confusing for the public as to where they're supposed to show up and make comment about the relevant maps and the process. So I would ask you all to consider that. I think we could probably put our heads together as staff and come up with potential options for you all to find a way to do that, and maybe we'll do that and share them with the chair, and maybe we can figure out how to address it somehow at next meeting. But I hearing your desire to express your thoughts on the process and how it could be improved next time around, and express those to the board. And as staff, we'll put our heads together and find a way, a workable way, and present that to you all for you to do that.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Azon.
I'll just note that in 2013, I went back and read some of the documents in 2013, and there was some discussion produced by NDC of the process of which maps got included and excluded at which times. It doesn't cover exactly what I would imagine a postmortem doc would include. I mean, given that we probably want to recommend that people come in with a better set of criteria or a better decision-making process than it feels like we've got. But that last time NDC prepped something, and that we may be able to ask someone else to at least give us a skeleton.
Okay. Any further comments regarding the item 8, future agenda items? Commissioner Bender. Chair recognizes Commissioner Bender. You have your hand raised.
Through the chair, when we do lessons learned, it has to be documented so that 10 years from now, they can look at it and see what worked, what could we have improved, and that they could take that historical data so that they could have, better meetings or better outcome or a faster outcome. So if we should do it as part of the meeting, not a separate meeting. So because if you do a separate meeting, I'm not sure they would be documented and they would be included. That's only my question to the council. If they're included, that's great. We can meet another time. But if our comments, our lessons learned are not included, then we should do it as part of the meeting, whenever that last meeting is, either 28th or the 1st or the 2nd.
Look, so it's no problem. We can just agendize it for the next meeting. That's not a problem. We'll just agendize it for the next meeting. And if you decide to take it up, then you can take it up. And if you decide not to take it up, we can figure it out then.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other items? Oh, I see Commissioner Deanon had his hands raised.
Yeah, I would suggest that if there is lessons learned, this would be a great opportunity for people to go back to their writing skills, and every commissioner who wants to write a short essay on what they think the process could be improved, and have it filed for the public record so that if somebody wants to come back and see it, lessons learned are great, but we have a lot on our plate for the next meeting. I don't think a minute should be spent on lessons learned until we actually have completed the item at hand, which is to get some maps in front of the San Mateo County supervisors. But I think writing an essay would be great. All of our kids are having to do this. It'd be a one-page essay, less than 1,000 words. It's much harder to write a short essay than it is a long one, and this would save everybody a lot of time. So that's my thought on the matter.
Well said, Commissioner Daya. Any further comments? Well, great. Been a great, robust discussion. Vice Chair
Sorry.
Romero has a hand raised.
I'm so sorry. Just quickly. I wanted to just someone had mentioned at the last meeting a real problem about the lack of districts or adding more districts, and I know that is not the conversation to be had right now at 9:29, but at some point I do think that that addresses a more long-term problem that we should somehow take into consideration. I don't know when, but I do think if we are going to have this meeting where the staff is involved, just learning about that process and memorializing that process. So 10 years from now, we don't find ourselves in the same predicament and we're actually learning from these discussions. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Monzon.
Yeah, I just would like to thank you, Chair. Just want to echo what Commissioner Dina and Romero said. I feel like we are just going around and around. I am more of an action than talking. I'm sorry, I don't want to offend nobody, but I think we're talking too much. I said in the previous meeting that this don't get too technical. We're not making progress. And this is a 10-year plan. I think we're getting tangled in a short-term solution. Let's be real. Here is the need for more districts. That way in the future, hopefully this is recorded, so this is for the future. The next 10 years when they see this, we need more districts. We need to use tonight we have spent a large amount of a great deal of time. And we didn't even paying attention of discussing the possibility, even for future item, to talk about more districts. I heard there is lack of representation, disengagement. We're trying to make out of these 5 districts to make it happen magic. Let's just be realistic. It's not going to happen. The coast side wants all together. The cities wants to be all together. Nobody wants to be split. Common sense for me is very simple. More districts. So we can be talking another meeting, another 3 hours, and we're not making progress. How can I would like to please encourage it because the numbers are putting us against the wall. So I don't understand. You say community of interest. Well, everybody has community of interest. The Pacific Islander community, the Hispanic community of interest, everybody has community of interest. So we're in a gridlock. We cannot make progress. Let's take the opportunity. We're going to end up narrowing to 1 or 3, maybe 3 maps and 1 preference. But let's set the tone for the future. We need more districts. When we have more districts, we can have a better service to our cities. The supervisors, we should have more opportunities to help the communities. Simple. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any further comments before I close the meeting? Then I'll say the meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Very good and robust discussion. Good night.
Oh, the time is now 9:33 p.m. and the meeting is off the record and adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.